the games that we He's chewing. What's up, Garrett? What are you wearing?
I found the shirt in my closet.
Nicely done.
He's a big time wrestler.
He's a big time wrestler. Today everybody's nice and tired. We've all been working for a few days, but we found ourselves doing a podcast, even to our own chagrin, as they say.
It should be relaxing.
Yeah, well, we're gonna hang out, so it doesn't matter. I brought Steven some of his favorite beer. Some Hefeweizen.
That's true.
Steven brought us our snacks today. This is kind of like a preschool snack time. That's how I feel right now.
Yeah. Little show and tell.
Yeah, we're doing a little show and tell.
I'm so hungry.
Well, it's been about how many days since our last gathering?
On the clock, right?
Yeah.
When did we do our last?
Is that your book?
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of show and tell.
Never mind. Don't worry about it when we did the last podcast. This is a book Garrett's 100 and some odd pages
It was
into.
last Friday.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so excited to talk about this subject to anybody that will listen. But
All right,
yeah.
Garrett.
Maybe two guys will listen today.
Forget the back cover. What am I looking at?
Forget the back cover. He didn't read the back cover.
It looks like a.
What is it?
Well, it is as the title suggests, the unauthorized autobiography of Kim Jong-il, as dictated to Michael Malice. No, it's an amazing book. It is as the the cover suggests. Maybe we should get this in focus here.
I don't know if
best
that'll
we can.
do such things,
We'll
but
see.
we'll
It is
work with what we got.
It is as the cover as the cover suggests, 100% true. But at any rate, it details the great leader's exploits. You know, his
Just the man himself, Kim Jong Il.
Well,
From babyhood to
that is okay. So that's the thing. I don't know quite how to what I can make an analogy to as to what he would be, but he's like Forrest Gump. You know how Forrest Gump, everything in America that happened that was significant in the latter half of the 20th century, he was there for, literally every single thing. He's Forrest Gump of the Eastern Hemisphere. He's there at 3 when his dad, the great general and later marshal, is signing the peace treaties to the end of the Korean War and all of this, and then he inherits this communist regime, which you might ask yourself well, how does one inherit a communist regime? That's kind of like a contradiction in terms, right? Generally, that's right. Communism is not supposed to be something that's inherited, right? It's supposed to be anti-feudal in origin.
Traditionally, how it works is they kill.
Sure. Yeah.
Whoever's in charge of them, the people around whoever's in charge kill each other until someone consolidates enough power. But
Yeah.
You got to worry about when
Yeah.
your politics turn to that.
Exactly.
That's not a safe place to be.
Exactly.
So, what's your impression of his character?
Also, how do you decipher what this guy Michael Malice is joking about and?
Oh well, yeah. That's just so. That's the thing about this book is it's depressing, and yet it has a weird sort of humor to it at the same time.
Of course it does.
But So that's
it's a funny book. It looks funny.
If you hear
It's packaged as a.
It's
presented
yeah.
as a funny book.
Right.
Yeah.
It's gotta be.
Yeah.
Look at his fucking teeth. They're
Teeth.
fucking a joke. His teeth themselves are a joke.
Yeah.
What's wrong with his teeth?
They're like Photoshop.
Yeah, you can tell they're like false.
Oh,
There's
wow.
something.
They're completely
He's really
false.
nice teeth.
I don't actually know the story. There.
How do you know he doesn't
there's-
just have really
There's
nice
something
teeth?
going on.
I don't know. I'm just saying the picture it's a good quality picture. That's all I'm saying.
They look like clown
Kim
teeth
Jong-il.
to me, though. There's something
You're
a little.
beautiful. You're fucking beautiful. I like the weird. You're not going to be able to see it, camera, but
Yeah.
Pseudo. You know.
Right. So instead of the
Communist.
hammer and sickle
Right.
that the Soviet Union, a lot of other communist regimes have, they have a hammer, sickle, and a it's like a paintbrush, but it's what they use to write, because they have these weird injunctions.
Oh, it's like a calligraphy pen or something.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right. So they have these weird injunctions on certain innovations, almost like Islamic countries do. They call it the Juche idea, where they do things in their own particular Korean way. So even communism, they do in their own Korean way.
Oh, good.
Which is why they can
Good.
justify a hereditary lineage.
Good for them.
There you go.
Yeah, well, you got to make do with
So
what you
back
got.
to what's Kim Jong-il like?
Dogmatic in the extreme, and from like his earliest age, but also, I mean, he's an innovator on the largest scale. I mean, he conceives of new theories of arts that are
What did
on the level of the Copernican revolution and what have you. I'm speaking facetiously, of course, but this is how the book reads, and it's like literally how their mythology reads, and what have you. You know what I mean?
So like he's like the inventor of all these.
Exactly.
Sounds kind of like Nero in that sense.
Yeah.
There's
yeah.
a Roman emperor who is famous for like locking people into a theater to watch him perform musical acts.
Sure.
So one of the famous stories that women were giving birth in his performance because he wouldn't let them leave.
Oh my God. that I had not heard. Yeah, no, that is amazing.
It's crazy, man.
So is this Michael Malice guy?
Is he Korean?
Well, no, he's not. You can see him on the back of the book.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
his
So
name doesn't sound too Korean, does it?
he was born in the Soviet Union, and
Well, one question I have is that it says after thousands of years of Korean history. Is he
Sure.
well versed in thousands of years of Korean history?
well, okay. So
This guy is interesting. He has a graphic novel that he's the subject of
yes.
called Ego and Hubris.
Yes.
What's that about?
I'm dying to read that. I've not read it. Apparently, it is loosely based on his actual life. Harvey Pekar is apparently a famous graphic novelist. I don't know a great deal about him, but he's apparently some great illustrator.
Did you see this part about Matt Hughes?
No.
Right. Yeah.
He is also the co-author of several other books, including Made in America with UFC Hall of Famer Matt Hughes. And I want you to shut the fuck up with comedian D.L. Hewley.
Yeah.
But how about that weird?
Sounds like quite the character.
Absolutely.
Michael Malice,
adore
what's
this
up,
man.
dude?
I mean, he just.
Alright, let's play a game.
He's the.
Oh, the first game of a symposium. We're playing a game, everybody.
I'm going to read from the first full paragraph of a random page. Alright. It was time for industry in Korea to regroup and rebuild, now that the military could provide the proper foundation. I don't think this is going to be interesting.
That's alright, keep going.
To be honest, part of me didn't want to know how badly the factories were doing. This might be interesting. After looking over my options, I decided to go revisit the Hwanghae Iron Works first. The mill had been our first automated factory and was a symbol of the DPRK's industrialization. Of all the factories in the northern part of Korea, I knew it would be the one in the best condition. We can either skip ahead there. He's basically telling a story of his visit, I think.
What's the next chapter?
delivering diplomacy. Okay, let's figure out how bad it was at this factory.
So has Michael Malice traveled to Korea?
He did.
Speaking
travel to North
specifically
Korea.
North
Wait,
Korea.
so is this written like? Okay, so he's writing in the voice of Kim Jong Il.
Exactly.
I see.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's pretty funny.
Right, and so although, like as I said, although he brings a sort of humor to it, which you might wonder how you can bring a sort of humor to this subject, because it really is very dark. But even though he brings a sort of humor to it, he really is an authority on North Korea. There's only so many people from the United States that have traveled to North Korea. He spent some time there.
Is he one of them?
Yeah, he spent some time in North Korea. He was like more or less smuggled in, I understand, from some dude he met at like Burning Man or something to that effect. So he has spent some time in North Korea. He's read something like 60 books on North Korea. He got a bunch of the propaganda that they have inside North Korea. So although the book has a sort of humorous bent, it is like an authoritative, like there's nothing that is taken out of context that he's making up. You know what I mean?
Sure.
He's taking a lot of direct quotes from history and what have you, and he's kind of recreating this, you know, as an autobiography.
I wonder if he's got any proper death threats that he's had to consider.
That's a good question. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
And how do you
I don't know if
how do you
North
judge
Korea
a proper
has
death
that
threat?
kind of reach outside of North Korea.
Yeah, that's one thing I thought of.
No,
So like it's interesting. Like
No,
let's see if you
Hey,
guys
don't
can
tempt
kind of, let's see if you guys can kind of like,
don't poke the bear, Steven.
Yeah,
Yeah.
North Koreans are at the ICBM.
They're like, I don't like that kid with the green shirt.
They said one right for Brooklyn for Michael
He's
Malice.
been talking some shit.
Yeah. So let's see if you guys can like kind of re-engineer North Korea, North Korean ideology real quick. So the Mona Lisa. Just consider for a moment. What do you think that the North Koreans might say, or Kim Jong Il in particular, might say about the Mona Lisa?
Do they say that's a guy?
No, although you,
Heard that.
that would make some sense, but no.
That would be pretty undermining.
I mean, you can. I'll give you a hint. They're certainly not fond of the Mona Lisa.
I wouldn't
Right,
suspect
yeah.
that.
I mean, they're fond of almost nothing Western, so that doesn't tell you much. But
They think it's a homoerotic. Okay.
so
Sorry, everybody.
The,
It's your phone.
the North Koreans, 624. The North Koreans hate the Mona Lisa.
No, literally everyone who dares to watch this is gonna know your phone.
I don't know.
password.
I didn't even hear him. What did you say?
624. So they hate the Mona Lisa precisely because it equivocates, right? So everybody in the West, the reason that they liked the Mona Lisa, or the reason that it was a big deal in the first place, was because like some people would look at it and they'd go, "Oh, she has like a coy grin," and other people would look at it and say, "Oh, she has like a shy frown type thing." Like people didn't know, is she smiling? Is she frowning? What is she doing? Well, like that's the precise reason why
She's being
why they hate it,
misleading?
right? Well, it's that she's equivocating, right? So in North Korea, literally all art has to have number one, political content, and number
And
two,
no equivocating.
that political content, right? It cannot equivocate. There has to be like no questions about what you're pledging allegiance to with your art, like what your art is, what it's intended to do.
It has to be making a clear
right.
stance or whatever.
Right, because if it equivocates, then it might be subversive, and somebody might not know it. Right, there might be
Well,
irony
you
or
could say
something
even
that
if the message of the artwork is unclear in any way, that unclearness could leave room for a subversive.
Oh, you better not
interpretation.
insert some dirtiness into those unknowns.
Exactly.
Don't do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
I mean, if you're trying to bring about the revolution, you can't have these, these faggy artists.
Oh
do it there.
my
Do it there.
God!
that's
Yeah.
actually a really interesting
right.
part of early Soviet history.
Exactly right.
Is the artists were allowed for a long time to make art, Lovely.
Yeah. How early are you? How early are you talking?
So well, Lenin was still in charge. No, it's not like he didn't kill some artists.
Mm-hmm.
But when he was in charge, they were given more freedom to
Right.
paint or write or whatever.
So it wasn't
Music.
strict propaganda.
Not so. For example, there's this book called "We" by I don't want to say Yevgeny Zamyatin.
Amazing if that's correct.
Pretty sure it is.
I believe you.
Basically, he predicted he was a really big influence on Orwell. I'm not sure about Huxley, but I know he was on Orwell. But he predicted where the communist state was going into this totalitarian direction. He essentially envisions the space race or the space program
Right.
through this lens in like the 1920s, and this was allowed to be published in the Soviet Union. So make sure that's right too. But he got published not as like a dissident. But then Stalin essentially started killing people
Right.
during the purges in the 30s as soon as he came to power. So, and Mao had a similar thing during the what was it called? There was a period of the Maoist revolution where he was encouraging all sorts of art, and then it was much quicker with him,
Yeah.
where he basically encouraged people to do a bunch of artwork, and then as soon as they started making it, he just started killing them.
Right. Yeah.
Like if it was, subversive at all. But
Yeah.
it was very, I mean, the idea of how quickly art can become propaganda
Right.
is very, it's a, I don't know. I guess it's a contentious topic, but it's also, in my opinion, art can become propaganda very, very quickly.
Oh, very quickly. Certainly. I mean, well, it's tough, right? It seems like you don't even have to like precisely define propaganda. Like we know how to avoid it, right? And how to avoid it is like you can't have restrictions on content. Like as soon as things get overly censorious,
Right.
then eventually like everything just becomes propaganda because everything becomes so like so ideological. Well, so narrowly ideologically circumscribed. Right? Everything is just within a small hegemony.
Well, the thing about art is it takes place at the symbolic
Right.
level of representation.
Right.
So if there's anything that is a symbol or symbolizes a value that the state doesn't purport to support, then it'll become purport to support, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then it becomes, subversive. But then on the other hand, if the people in the state are being given these implicit values, I saw this ad nauseum taking creative writing classes in school,
Sure.
where when you have people being given values, it comes out in the art.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if
Well-
it's being made for an audience where it's implied that those value systems are going to be adhered to.
That's the way art works, though, right? You represent your values in your art. So if you're convinced that, right?
Yeah. No.
If
Yeah.
you convince yourself
Yeah.
that these values are worthwhile,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
that's what your art will
Right.
portray, no matter what.
And
Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
right. When there are
But that
when
doesn't make it
there are
any less propaganda,
No,
because at that point
of
the
course
idea
not.
has you.
when
Right,
there
the
are-
idea has you.
when there are symbols, when there are symbols in artwork that become off limits or what have you, though, like that is the road towards the sort of intellectual tyranny that it only leaves space for propaganda. So like just to give a sort of example, speaking of symbolism right now, like what we're doing right now, this sort of like conspicuous consumption, we're up late at night, like enjoying food, right? Like when we're not eating to like live, we're living to eat. Like we're just having a vibe, right. But you know what I mean. Like this is a sort of symbol that's like in direct defiance to that sort of artwork as propaganda that says like everything that you do has to be towards some end, and that end has to be towards the greater good. Like this is kind of like a right. This is like no. This is something right. This is something like right. It was a great way to put it. Yeah.
I think I'll say this. I think it's very interesting. I've always been fascinated by like food programming and like I think it's interesting what we're doing, which like people have done before. Like obviously there's a whole genre of food television where people like eat on camera. But like I think food is
I think what we're doing
one of the most like basic symbols.
Right,
Like,
and we're also trying to incorporate it equally into an amalgamation of different things. We're trying to put the art that they portray on that specific Food Network channel into context in how you should enjoy it, not in that weird confined reality.
Yeah.
Like it's not it's not like we're just like look at our food.
Some food shows that are better than others that doing that. Obviously,
our late Anthony Bourdain has created such a.
I feel like he would like what we're doing. So
I think the idea would be unoffensive to him.
I liked.
Anthony Bourdain's a huge influence on Steven and I. Maybe Garrett.
Yeah, myself too. Yeah. I'm very torn up.
That was hard day for me, though.
Yeah. That was one of the weirdest things I've ever experienced was how emotional Steven was over Anthony Bourdain. But to know. I mean, I understood. It was hard for me too. I don't know. Steven took it hard.
Partially,
Steven, I don't know.
He was a creative spirit. I can only imagine he had a lot going on and a very, I'm sure.
They say
everything that was going on in his life was very intense.
There was a possibility of some.
Listen, he was always
faultiness in his medications. I heard.
I
I also know about.
Too,
I'm not gonna say anybody's name, but I also know he had female issues.
So I wanted to bring that up.
That girl at Asia Argento, right?
Yeah, I wanted to bring it. Yeah.
It's not like no one knows. I mean.
I don't know anybody. I don't know them, so it's weird for me to be like, this girl did that to this guy, because that's a real accusation.
Right.
No, not that, but like people know about.
He was hurt.
He was going through stuff with his wife and whatever.
And women are so powerful.
Yeah, I wanted to bring. The two of you heard about the controversy surrounding her since his death.
No.
So I wanted to bring her up.
Wait.
So
we're gonna preemptively attempt at an edit here, so he can bring up Asia Argento.
It's really difficult for me to. I'm gonna. We have a couple. So I'm just gonna say what I know of her and what has happened and some of the facts and just a little bit of my feelings and. You guys kind of take it, but it's all like this is all a little bit blurry for me too. But I'll just say, this is not a person that strikes me as a good person. This woman. So okay. This woman was one of the earliest accusers of Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, that was a whole part of it. Which
is obviously no fault against her, obviously, but you might It might like ring some bells with regards to just the types of circles that she runs in or has run in and what have you. So at any rate, you know, not only was she an early accuser, but she's like a very far left feminist type. A lot of her rhetoric is just very fucking out there.
I thought that was strange too because I knew Anthony Bourdain was not that.
No, he wasn't.
And he was going along with it.
Right. With the whole Harvey Weinstein thing and everything. Yeah, yeah.
It was like an amplified social media version of the plot of Dostoevsky's Demons in a way.
Very, very good analogy. Yeah.
Because there were, I mean.
Yeah, and he just
I know.
And he just seemed to walk into it very uncritically. Okay, and so this happened before his death, and then since his death, this is the big controversy that has come out. Asia Argento was accused to have had slept with an actor when he was underage.
Jimmy Bennett, 17 years old.
Thank you. Yes. Do you want to say a little bit about the story?
I mean, I can read. Argento denied the allegation of a sexual assault. She said that she never had a sexual encounter with Bennett, and that she had made a request, and that when he made a request for money to her, her partner Anthony Bourdain, paid him to avoid negative publicity.
Jeez,
Right. So one of the things that really
it was a $380,000 settlement.
Yeah, and one of the things that struck me,
That's a lot of money to pay for someone that you didn't fuck.
How true is this, or is this speculative?
So there's.
I mean, she paid $380,000.
Right. And there's photos of the two of them in bed, without clothes on. It sure looks like they're up to something. I mean, if they're not,
Why lie about it? Be like, yeah, I fucked this 17-year-old. Shit.
What is so troubling is that right, yeah, right. What is so troubling is not even just the lying, but that she said to the press that
lying is so funny, dude.
Anthony encouraged her to pay him off because he was harassing.
Yeah.
That is what I found so troubling. Even if that was true.
It says part on Wikipedia. It says that Anthony Bourdain paid for him.
If you are a good person, you just don't say that about your dead husband. You just leave him out of it, and you just quietly go about your business. You just don't. I
had no idea about any of this.
No, me neither.
It just it just has me a little worked up. When I think about that. It really, really, I don't like that at all.
To Anthony, I guess.
Well.
Cheers.
He was certainly a good guy.
Hopefully he's not fucking rolling in the grave about it.
Hey, I hope he's looking down on us somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess it is what it is. Shit.
What about?
I can hardly believe that that's true.
That
it's unbelievably ironic that she was having an affair with a 17-year-old while she was accusing Harvey Weinstein of.
Yeah.
You don't think that's possible?
No, I think it's possible. I'm just saying.
It's hard to believe.
I mean, I think you're saying she's shocked, right? I mean,
it's like,
it's shocking. It's a shocking revelation.
I think after reading Dostoevsky, you have less shock. I feel like you'd be a little,
just because.
Batten down your hatches, my friend. People are crazy.
Just because I'm not surprised doesn't mean it's not emotionally. It's anomalous information nonetheless.
I mean, these things hurt when there are people that you got a lot of respect.
And there's always a difference between fact and fiction.
Yeah.
I was gonna say this while we were still talking about fiction. I saw a really interesting clip of Joe Rogan interviewing the guy who is the Fight Club author.
Oh, sure.
Oh, nice.
They were talking about...
Where at? On his podcast?
Yeah. And they were talking about the impact of Fight Club.
How do we find that guy's name?
Which is interesting because I mentioned in Stan the Hot Dog Man that his favorite movie was Fight Club. I don't know if you've read this.
No, I haven't yet. But yeah.
Is that Chuck Palahniuk? How do you say his name? Palahniuk?
Yeah. It was that guy.
Is he also a stand-up comedian?
I don't know. He's strange.
Or is he like a comedic writer in any aspect? Because I thought
I don't know.
Anyway,
I never read the book, but
he seems to be a very famous author.
Are you familiar with that that fella's writing methods at all?
Very little. Kind of from. He was talking about at the beginning of this clip how he, well, essentially immerses himself in whatever it is he's like.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
in medias res.
I mean, my understanding
is
that
what he calls
he's
his
like,
style.
I mean, well, as you
That
said,
just
he's
means that
I think he
into
calls
the
like
middle
a
of
weird,
things,
a weird
it
guy.
says.
That usually is referring to where the story begins.
Right.
So if it kind of begins right in the middle of action,
Mm-hmm.
and then the story kind of goes back and
Gotcha.
forth over time.
Yeah. But no, I mean, my understanding is that he's like a pretty intense introvert, and that
Right. Yeah.
you know he
I
doesn't
used to,
consider himself like much of an idea guy, and he like kind of forces himself to just like go. You know, he just
Out
goes
and do
talks to
stuff,
people,
yeah.
and right, just seeks out like people that he thinks
gains
look weird and
sympathetic stuff.
interesting, and right, yeah,
Yeah.
just yeah. I've read a couple of his books.
Really?
Well, I read Fight Club back in the day, which was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite a.
He's been nailed as a nihilist. This guy.
Is he?
Well, I
That's
mean,
what
he
it
did
says.
blow up the whole city.
Right.
I don't know
Yeah.
if that was
Fight
on
Club
in the book.
certainly reads like a philosophy of nihilism.
I wondered the whole time. It seemed.
This has a fucking Wikipedia. You are a crazy thing. It says right here about how Fight Club is perceived as a men's right activist movie.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess I can't see that.
Yeah.
I mean,
During a Tumblr Q&A, Pellinger, or however you say his name, stated that his inspiration to write Fight Club came from what he perceived as a dearth of novels that explore male issues, and further questioned whether young males are considered a profitable demographic by publishers.
I think that's interesting that he's almost saying what people are accusing Jordan Peterson of trying to do
Right.
in his kind of
well,
call
yeah.
to
Yeah.
higher masculinity or whatever.
It's funny that you bring that up because Peterson
Um,
called Fight Club the most fascist book, if I recall, the most fascist book ever written.
Wow.
you haven't, you don't.
I mean, it is. I mean,
I think
it's a fair statement.
I don't even think he said it. I think he wrote it, but he definitely, if he didn't write it, he definitely said it. And
it's because I get what Palanak was, because I mean I've obviously similarly written about the male aggressive instinct and what is driving people to fight. That was I mean I'm really focused on that in this story.
yeah.
Stan the Hot Dog Man with this character. He was a large part explaining why he would like get drunk and get into these fights.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with him that there's he was actually talking about Peterson during this interview, and so one of the things that Palanak brought up was just the lack of, which he had obviously heard after writing the story, but you know, kind of, he was talking about how Peterson talks about men not having rough and tumble play as kids.
Oh, really?
And so that leaving this, you know, gap in adulthood where they kind of don't understand physical boundaries and whatever.
That's very fascinating.
Right.
Yeah.
It was interesting that Peterson got brought into it.
Yeah.
It's even more.
Who brought him?
interesting.
Pallet, whatever.
Yeah, he was.
fucking
He.
it is.
It's. Oh, so to be fair, I haven't seen the whole interview. I saw this clip of the impact of Fight Club.
It's not impossible that Joe Rogan brought up Jordan Peterson, but who knows?
It's not, but it was, he
Either way,
he made
that's
he
interesting,
made it. He basically said
Well,
not to bring up Peterson again.
That's what
he
it
said.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Man,
Well, he
you know,
probably talks about him a lot.
I'll have to go through my Peterson text and like search for Fight Club and see if he wrote that or if he said that somewhere.
It makes sense because in the
Yeah.
the fighting instinct isn't integrated at all into
Right.
this
Right.
community,
Right.
and it results in this completely split personality and
Yeah.
a massive explosion. So
Yeah, no, it does make sense because exactly like what you were saying about like rough and tumble play, the stuff that Chuck Pluniak or whatever his name was bringing up, and that's all like based on like consent and stuff, right? And like the Fight Club has like a momentary consent, and then like.
those guys were just like fighting, right?
Well, sure, but like there's a certain philosophy behind it that even sounds fascist, right? I mean, when you, I mean,
He's cutting you off.
Fight Club.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back in action.
So I was talking about this connection Peterson draws between Fight Club and fascism, and I think what he's saying, and he doesn't go into it really, so you have to kind of like parse it on your own. But I think what he's saying is that like if you read Fight Club, it literally only gives you a choice between nihilism and fascism. As soon as you have organization and you have community, it goes to fascism. So literally the first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club, right? Like that sounds like a fascist rule, right?
Well, it's also not. It made the people who were in it pledge complete adherence to the group.
Right.
There was no moving beyond the group. That was not, and it was also so. It was also fascist, and that was a cult of personality, where there was this one guy at the top of it, and everyone's trying to emulate this one guy. So it's fascist in that way.
I mean, this is actually like, this sounds kind of weird maybe, but this actually like really fascinated me because like I don't know, having not listened to the Joe Rogan Chuck Pluniak episode and not even really knowing 100% what Peterson means by that, it's an interesting connection just to draw between like you consider something like Fight Club, and it seems like you have a choice between something like materialism and nihilism on the one hand,
Right.
and you know, I mean fascism would be one way to put it, but it is like a funny, I guess, like
consumption with the base instinct towards aggression would be the other.
Right. As soon as you,
Right.
and it's organized aggression in that way, right?
Well, I mean,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But like, I guess what's interesting to me is like the precursor that I can kind of draw between that and like these weird kind of associations of men. I think somebody brought up like men rights activists before, and I'm thinking of like MGTOWs and things like that. Even though these aren't like ultra masculine groups the way that they are in like Fight Club, I could see like a weird like connection between like a similar sort of like choice on the one hand that I think these people see themselves in between materialism and nihilism,
Right.
and they just feel like they're not going to win. And
well, I mean, it's Fight Club is this one instinct kind of taking over and dominates the action of the plot, and is seen to this spectacular conclusion of essentially like fucking shit up, just
sure,
like just raw like.
Have you guys
anger and
heard
whatever.
of the Cacophony Society?
No.
This is apparently what he's a member of, and it's exactly what you're talking about. It's a group that just does rambunctious activity. It's exactly what Fight Club's about, seemingly.
Well, I mean, there's a big difference between fighting people and whatever creating
rambunctious
cacophony.
activity. Right.
Yeah.
Huge.
Because that's only one type of rambunctious
Dude,
activity.
it's such a huge difference. It's so like so this kind of brings us back to this sort of stuff that we're talking about with like North Korea, right? Like there's no rambunctious activities allowed in North Korea. Like,
Okay.
at all.
Yeah,
You
there's
know what I
no
mean?
rough and tumble play.
Like right. Like what you do, like it has to have a purpose. It has to go towards
Right,
making
yeah.
the state great,
Right.
and that is it, right? So like
Well, the only
it kind
rough and tumble plays in service to the state or whatever.
exactly right.
But I mean, I think he does, like, I think Fight Club was important in that, like, it did bring up, like, what do you do about male aggression? Like,
Right.
if you comfort it with
Yeah.
IKEA furniture and whatever, it's not going anywhere. Like, that's the issue Fight Club brings up, is, like, that instinct to fight, it really hits home how real that is and how
Oh, yeah.
our culture can't just wave that away. It underlies our culture. Do you want to hear? Well,
Do you want to hear something real quick? This is just a note. I'm actively researching this Chuck dude. His parents, or his father and his father's girlfriend, were murdered 3 years after he released Fight Club.
Oh my
And
God.
he was asked, according to Wikipedia, by the judge what he thinks their punishment should be. It was granted.
What he said?
Kill him.
Wow. Holy shit. That's wild.
So do you...
What state?
Do you think that's considered...
hey,
Is he a
I'm fucking
murderer?
Jewish.
No.
Eye for an
No.
Someone killed your father.
I'm just asking a question. I'm asking... I'm like Hassan. Come on. He should go behind the sun?
No,
You think he should go behind the
No,
sun?
he's not a murderer. You know. Well,
I'm asking the question. He granted this guy death, and by public opinion,
So can I ask you guys?
he was like,
sure.
"Sure." The judge was like,
By
"Sure."
Public opinion.
The judge.
Right.
That's not public opinion.
Yeah,
it's the
it's one
judge.
public.
Yeah, yeah.
It's one man in public.
It's interesting because there's a lot of
Difference in a public
advocates
and a
for
fucking judge.
what is called oh shoot, I'm blanking on the name now.
Listen, depending on the state, if the death penalty is certainly on the table in some states for a double homicide, so.
Okay, so anyway, there's
So
a name
you're
for that.
answering my question in that it's an actual debate. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying, in my mind, if a judge asks you, in your opinion, what would you like to be done to the people who murdered your father and his girlfriend, and one of the options is the death penalty. I've never been in that situation, so I'm not sure what I would do, but more power to that guy.
I tend to agree with Steven. Yeah, I tend to agree with Steven. So like,
I'm not.
I don't have a strong opinion, but like, yeah, like
Equally as curious on all ends.
there is a debate, right?
Is he a murderer?
Should it matter like what the victims, or I mean, in the case of a murder, obviously,
Did him and the
you
judge
can't
go?
ask the
Are
victim,
him
right?
and the
But,
judge
like,
a conspiracy against this dude?
should it matter, right? Like what the victims of this crime
All the cops
have to
are
say about
criminals
it,
and all
right?
this and
So, like just to put it in a different context, like if somebody steals from you, you know what I mean? Should it maybe be like up to the person who's getting stolen from, if you will?
What the punishment is?
Well, I mean, not up to
you get
in
4 options.
totality,
Yeah.
but right, like circumscribed within a certain. So just to give
Choose
you
from
like
A, B, C, D.
right, just to give you like just to make it a little bit more concrete while still keeping it abstract. Like if somebody goes to some mansion and they go on the property and they steal $1,000 worth of goods, and they get caught, and the person that owns the mansion says, I got my property back. I don't really want them to be punished any more than they have to be. Should they really
sure.
be punished to the full extent
That's
of
what
the
we
law?
do with civil suits, man.
But that's not what we do with criminal suits, though. I mean, so this is
Right, that's why we have 2 separate systems.
But no, I'm asking with regards to criminal suits. I'm not asking with regards to civil suits. You don't think we should do that?
The reason they're separated is so people who the state deems as criminals are tried, and then people who feel they've been wronged and have
Yeah, but the state
damages
is evil.
and
Who
go
cares what the
after
state
their
thinks? I mean, that's not justice, right? I mean, that's not an argument for
Damages.
justice. Just that the state deems you to be like worthy of going to jail, right? Like, I'm asking like a broader sense. Like, would it be like what would be most just?
I'm saying I personally think it's a good idea to
Okay.
separate the two functions of the
Right.
court.
Huh.
Like there's a reason for that. That's
Well,
like people
granted.
can go after their damages on one hand, and then when
Huh.
there's been
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
objective infringement of justice according to the state, people are prosecuted by the state. And what I was gonna say before we got off the topic of Fight Club, because I was really interested by that. Like,
That's an important. I feel like that's an important book for the
well, it's important for
time that we're dealing with, like with the Jordan Peterson.
Well, I think it's an important part of our life too, because we
It's
in
an
a way
important part,
belong
yeah.
to a fight club. Like that's what we do.
Right.
Well, I mean, in a,
right.
in
Me
a
and Garrett.
small part. like,
Me and Garrett engaged in combat earlier.
right.
Right
No,
before.
You don't talk
wasn't-
about Fight Club.
Well,
it's
I'm
a-
gonna because I'm not a fascist. Fucking
Well, also there's a
communist,
big
dude.
difference between getting together and just pummeling the shit out of each other
Until your until your face is falling
and
off.
sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
rolling until someone taps.
Mhm.
There is a difference there.
We
Well,
didn't tap
especially-
today, did we?
I think you tapped me once.
I got you with
about
an
me
arm.
once.
But like,
But no, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, especially like I love rolling with Sam, man. Like, I mean, we don't always have the best rolls, but a lot of times I get really good rolls with Sam. It sharpens me.
What's
up
wrong
my-
when
my
we don't have
technique
good
and
rolls?
everything. It's usually probably my fault. I'm probably like too lazy, or
I was hoping it wasn't my fault.
I'm too drunk. Or,
Hey, I had a shout out to Mike Carpenter. I had an unfortunate scenario with him where I came to the gym a little too intoxicated and gave him a
Sometimes,
poor
yeah.
roll. Hey,
yeah, sometimes you just go.
he
too
got
deep.
mad. He's like, why are you moving so slow today? I was like, Mike, I'm about 64 ounces of beer into this roll.
I feel pretty heavy, dog.
I'm heavy. I haven't got that usual guard passing mentality. Got that pull you in my sleepy guard type technique right now. But also another shout out to Aaron Malam for the amazing seminar yesterday.
Yes.
It was an amazing seminar because it was there were techniques that he started a technique that is a very simple concept, which is what we call what they call in 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu the jailbreak escape, where you're in mount and you get somebody into half guard basically right to the lockdown. And then from that he correlated it to protecting yourself with your arms in, so when you're on the bottom in half guard, how to protect yourself, and that correlated to then attacking from top half guard with these like what he called short underhooks or false underhooks, which are like below the elbow manipulation, so it's like between the wrist and the elbow joint.
you're underhooking.
Yeah, kind of any direction. So you're either coming. Reset that. Well, apparently the timer was a little bit off, ladies and gentlemen. Well, here we go. All I was saying is I'm extremely respectful and appreciative of Aaron Malam. Hopefully we become a final round workshop jiu-jitsu academy. That should be the name of our gym, anyhow, the jiu-jitsu school. Aaron Malam is a third degree black belt from Henzo and John Danaher and some dude named Ray Diago, I believe, Brazilian guy. Hey, if you want to be Brazilian about it, hey Diago. He's super, Aaron Malam is very technical, so technical. And I was very fortunate enough to be his repping dummy, his technique dummy for a majority of his
He is not a
demonstration.
gentle demonstrator.
No, he demonstrates exactly how I like demonstration to be done. He does it. He does all of his technique, which is sort of why I like his technique anyway. He does all of his technique as though he's the weaker opponent, which in his case he might be. He's 160 pounds and he's training at a gym with 1,300 students.
Mm-hmm.
So he was actually talking when we went to get food after the seminar yesterday. He was talking about how he seldom comes across a blue. He rarely goes against the random 200-pound blue belt. So when he comes to seminars, it's kind of like he has to put on his cautious face and be like, all right, I'm rolling with these. I'm not calling blue belts spazzy or white belts, but whatever. Like, he's going against these guys that aren't necessarily the safest person to roll with, but he's respectful enough to be like, I'll roll with you, just let's go at this pace.
Mm-hmm.
So his technique has developed a very safe style. Safe in the respect maybe Floyd Mayweather is safe, where he's finishing fights, but he's also not trying to take any hits. No unnecessary damage. Oh well, hey, Floyd's career in the beginning was a lot flashier than it ended up being, but
Yeah.
I'm not calling Aaron Milam flashy either.
But
He knows some flashy stuff. His tornado
Did you roll
sweep.
with him?
I got to rep with him a lot, and then when Aaron reps, it's kind of cool that he'll a lot of the times when I saw him repping with students was he showed them the technique, and then he was like, all right, try to do it to me, or I'll do it to you and try to defend it. So it was like he gave them a little 10-second, 15-second live action. He did that with my co-student or children's instructor, Aaron. Aaron's a big proponent of being on bottom turtle. He feels comfortable, he says, in bottom turtle, which is an interesting thing to say. Hey, I feel comfortable in side control, so fuck me too. But my point is that Aaron was open enough. Aaron, I am. We don't have to take this camera. We don't have to take this camera to the mats, ladies and gentlemen. We don't. But if you want to put me in side control, I bet I'll regard. I bet I will.
The turtle?
No. I'm talking about
top side control.
I'm talking about I like being in. I don't feel super threatened in somebody's top side if they're.
You're very good from certainly. You're very good from side control. Yeah.
I'm confident in my regard. Is the whole point.
Yeah.
But anyway.
You're very good at regarding. You're inverting.
All I'm saying is that I would also be willing for people to threaten. Like I would be willing to start in side control like every roll, just so people can try to attack me from there all the time. But also, Aaron, my fellow children's instructor, was open enough to be like, hey, Aaron Milam, will you attack me from top turtle and let me try to defend? And Aaron Milam fucked him up, but he was like, I want to learn what you do from top turtle.
Oh, that's
wise. He was asking, what do you do? Because I feel comfortable here. What would you do to me if I was there? And he fucked him up, and he was like, okay, I got it. Like, thanks.
That's wise. Yeah.
That's smart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I respect that, but it's kind of also awkward to be like, "Yo, attack me." Like I think I'm good enough at defending it, so attack.
Especially from like I'm a plan.
Well, I would also not state like my personal opinion is you get to bottom turtle or you get to turtle just so you can roll out or stand up. Like you don't just stay there and be like, "Oh, I'm safe."
No, yeah.
But
yeah,
what are you gonna do? I don't. My defense in side control is not to stay in side control. I'll tell you that.
No. Well, but no. I mean,
I try to never begin. One thing that I try to tell students that are beginning is that if you stop in jiu-jitsu, you're basically giving up. Like there's almost no time to stop in jiu-jitsu.
And turtle is that's a scary place, man. I mean,
it's certainly a space you can stop. Like you can be stuck there for a second.
Well,
you'll get stopped there.
Well, especially
anyway.
if you're a white belt facing another white belt, blue belt facing a blue belt type thing. You can afford to like kind of waste time there. But like, and even in MMA has like a bunch of like artificialities. But like in a street fight, you do not want to be in that place. And against a good jiu-jitsu,
well, especially guys hang out there in MMA, that's for sure.
Yeah, too much.
Well, you don't. One
I
thing
guess,
you want
I
to
guess they
do.
win their sport, so I don't know.
There's an interesting.
Well, I mean, once you get tired enough, you'll hang out in turtles.
Yeah, for sure. But I wouldn't.
I can't hardly blame them. Yeah, you're
I
right.
guess it's all relative.
Right.
You want to learn how to be defensive in the worst case scenario, but you also don't want to be an expert in the worst spot, because that means you're spending way too much time in the worst spot. Like, how much time do you want to spend getting beat up, or do you want to get better at being the one beating people up?
Right.
Like, there's a weird scenario. Like, yeah, I understand you want to be good at defense, but how much time can you sacrifice not being on top and winning?
Well, that mostly just depends on who you're rolling with. 'Cause it's
Yeah, but if you're like, I'm always gonna start in bottom turtle,
Right.
like,
Yeah, but
how
I
good
mean,
are you on top
If you
end?
started in bottom turtle with, whoever you're gonna fuck up anyways, you're gonna get out of bottom turtle and keep fucking them up. Like,
But then are you really learning how to fuck people up on top, or are you beating someone up who can't even stay on top?
Sure.
Then you gotta start rolling with people who can really fuck you up.
well, that's why you have to roll with different people, right?
That's why you don't want. That's why you don't want to
That's what it comes
stay.
down to. It's like, if you want to practice your defense, then roll as long as you haven't fucked you up. And
So
if
would
wanna
you
practice your
recommend
offense-
to somebody that's? I'm asking myself this question too. Would you recommend somebody who you would consider, maybe everyone in the gym would consider they're the best grappler in the gym? Would you recommend that they probably go to a school that can challenge them more, so they have to practice their defense more and not just practice not beating white belts up so hard?
Give me that question one more time.
So if you're in a scenario where you're the best grappler in the gym and you feel like you can't necessarily train as hard as you need to compete at the level you need to compete, would you recommend that person go train at a higher level school, or leave their gym or stay at their gym and keep helping the people that are there with?
Yeah, I haven't been doing jiu-jitsu for 2 years, so I've obviously never had this problem. So it's kind of hard for me to put myself in that situation, but like even like Danaher, I think advises people to like mostly roll with people once you get a certain amount good that you can defeat, where you're working on your offense, right? I don't know.
Danaher recommends offensive.
I think I might
Yeah, I think he
Yeah.
recommends at a point
be right.
rolling with people you can fuck up
Right.
by a good percent of the time.
Yeah.
I think he says, like, basically, if I remember correctly, it's like 40, 40, 20. Like, roll with people you can fuck up 40% of the time. Roll with
Even-
people who will fuck you up 40% of the time, and roll with people who you're competitive with like 20%.
Okay.
That could also
I wonder
be
if
my
that
own
includes-
personal idea, not but it might have been
I
from
think he
Dan
does
or-
Well,
give
I
some
also
numbers
wonder-
like that,
Instagram posts.
but I had the impression that it was even a little bit more lopsided towards people that
People
you
you
can
Well,
fuck
I've
up.
heard that.
That might be his. His might be fuck people up more. Mine is like,
Right.
although I think I probably,
I think I roll with people that can
I don't know.
manipulate too easily too often. Like, I always feel
roll
like
a
I get
lot.
mad when I roll with Mike and Dean and Nick and they don't fuck me up as much as I think they can. I get really upset.
Interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah. Honestly, I don't get too choosy just because
I don't. No,
you know.
I roll with everybody that has
exactly.
to me. There's no point in not.
But it is interesting to think.
All right.
I would like to just know what's the best
Let's
way.
turn Sam's question on him.
1 second.
I mean, well, before we get to that, I just want to say that
Okay.
I'm really, really grateful to get over my hyper super AIDS and be able to actually fucking roll again.
He has the AIDS, and I've rolled with him twice in a week.
It's
So
hyper super AIDS.
So
by the
that's
way.
good.
call that
So,
Super Sam
I'm just
mentality of not getting AIDS.
just thrilled. Yeah, it's awesome.
To be clear, we're talking about
Ringworm.
Yes.
not actually AIDS.
So let us reset this camera real quick, and we'll revert this question on me. So my recommendation to somebody who is training too often in a gym that isn't challenging them enough,
Oh, okay, yeah.
it would be my idea of what a hero is would correlate well with this analogy. Is you go and find,
It's gonna work out.
well, you go and you find a spot where you encounter the hardest thing you've ever encountered, to the point that you won't die and not come back. That would be pointless for everybody.
So don't go to like some
If you're
school
scared,
in,
don't go to TriStar, bro.
Sao Paulo and
Don't go fight
They
at
won't
Tiger
tell
Muay
you,
Thai
no,
in Thailand. If
well,
you're
they won't tell you
a-
at TriStar. They'll tell you in like if you go into like Brazil somewhere,
or if you go to like
just like
Liverpool and start boxing people, they'll stab you if you beat somebody
Team
up.
if you went to Team Calvin,
So we understand what
oh
I'm
my
saying,
God, yeah,
right?
totally fucking-
You go and you understand what people are capable of. You find where people are the sweetest and the kindest, but also ready to kill people if they need to.
I think there's
And then you come back
yeah, that's the second one.
and you express to these people what you experienced. You don't. I'm not saying for people to go away from people that they love and care about and want to help, but I'm saying that you might have
You
to
gotta
leave
go
them for a
gather-
little while.
You gotta go gather some information and bring it back.
Yeah,
to
you don't
the,
hunt and gather in the place that you feel most comfortable.
Right.
You hunt and gather on the edge of
Oh,
where you're about
absolutely.
to encounter danger.
I really won't. Speaking of that, I think we really gotta go to TriStar. I can't wait to do that. We gotta make that a priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's my opinion.
I think that's exactly the hero myth. Is you go out and slay the dragon and bring the gold back. Well, there's a third element to the hero myth, but
Who is she?
well, that's the question. The question is who is the captive of the dragon?
Yeah, who's
So
telling
you
them
go
to
to
sit
like
there?
some gym in Brazil, and then it's just a bunch of Paul Harris.
It's tell them how it's said.
Types.
Garrett, tell them how it's said.
Paul Harris?
Paul
Paul Harris.
Harris. Do you remember
There's
when
like
you
a
get
bunch of-
upset last time
there's like
on the
30
camera?
Paul
You got
Harris.
upset with us on the camera last time.
There's 30 Paul Harris lookalikes, and in the corner they just have a cage that says
Beware of dog.
No, it just says anima on it. And there's the girl sitting. They've got
She's just like this.
Paul Harris. And whoever taps everyone, like they just do
Whoever wins that day
right.
just gets to sleep in the cage also. You've won. Sleep in the cage tonight.
you could just hook
Can
her
you
up.
imagine how happy our hypothetical hero would be if he traveled to this gym in Brazil and got to stay in?
First day, got to stay.
Yeah,
We just created a story, just so you know.
yeah, that's a good one.
That's a funny myth.
That is a funny myth. But that would be a complete hero myth. Is if you went to the Brazilian gym, learned a bunch of stuff from rolling with them,
Well, my
then you would never really get to win though in this case because you weren't as good as the Brazilians. So then you would have to like steal the captive locked in the
you to
mat
free her.
side cage.
You free
you
them,
have to free her like in the middle of the night and come back to the gym.
and while she's escaped, you come back and be like,
No, you bring her back as your girl, and then you share all. You're like, guys, I got all this jujitsu to teach you. And then
oh, right,
just
right.
like-
Yep.
there's nubile young Brazilian girl
yes.
on your arm that you rescued from captivity in the
The immortal,
air-conditioned gym in
Yeah.
Favela, right?
the immortal hell.
That they were.
The
I don't think they actually do this at any gym in Brazil.
Nope, I think everybody's reasonable and
They
loving
might
of
do
all
that-
women and men.
They might do that at one of the gyms in Hassan's hometown, though. That sounds like something they would do. The Saudis.
I'm not even gonna say the country name because I don't want them coming after me. But fuck you.
The Saudis do fucked up shit behind closed doors.
But anyway,
Yeah,
our
yeah.
respective
Speaking of totalitarian
grappler
countries.
in our gym, I literally told him verbatim, hey, just so you know right now, you're the hero myth of this gym. I didn't mean to say it, but I was, I told him. Mike, I told him this.
I just realized
that's
not
right.
hitting stab him for a few minutes.
And so I don't know how he received that or whether he even heard me. But I've tried to I tried to express this entire idea to him that he needs to.
Well, dude, he is, man. We all believe him.
Dude,
know what I mean?
he's
Like,
literally the reason I know how to guard pass, and I know how to Kimura people
Dude,
as well as I do. He's why.
Well, he really is he is our hero, man.
He certainly represents
He represents the
us,
ideal
whether
grappler.
he likes it or not.
Right, yeah.
To the not
To the people who are
idyllic.
here.
Yeah, to the students who don't know better. He's the idea
He's
of what a
Best
a
example
great
around.
person at grappling is, and that protrudes into other parts of their life. They think that he's good at other things in his life
Right,
because he's good at this aspect. No, whatever you think we can do, we can't, Steve. All right. You can do whatever you want, dude. You can do whatever
That
you
was
want.
lovely.
Yeah, man. I think that that's interesting that you say that now. Yeah, I think that's true.
That was the derivation of my question.
Yeah.
Was what I discussed with my friend.
It's almost like I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's almost like we need like our own affiliation. You know what I mean? Just like I don't know, just something that we.
I think you can earn that. I think we may have earned it, but I don't think 3 or 4 years is enough to earn it.
I mean, obviously.
I think that with the help
it
of
would be good to
Henso
have,
Gracie Academy.
Yeah, I think it would be good to have the Aaron Milan
It would
affiliation.
be great.
I think
it would be great. And I welcome it. I don't want to say like or present that as some sort of like
I don't
catch
even
point,
know.
but
Oh yeah, I definitely agree that we have our own thing going.
I think we've got a great club here, man. I mean, I think we could call it fucking Dragon Leg Jiu-Jitsu. Or
I wouldn't
whatever.
even be
You
mad
know
about
what
that.
I mean?
I wouldn't be mad about that.
either-
Dragon Jiu-Jitsu?
Right.
Well,
Right,
it
we got a
should be
great family
Dragon
here,
Leg
man.
Breakers.
Like, yeah.
And it should
Dragon
be a
Leg.
picture of me
Yeah.
T getting just the heel, like the shit heel hooked out of him.
There you go. Yeah.
Just his leg, like
Just
Big
his-
Nick, fucking
yeah,
heel looking.
just a beard
Yep.
that
Yep.
goes down to the knees. Just
Yep.
I would. Hey,
That'd be a cool t-shirt.
I'm not mad at that idea. I just want to make sure. 3 years.
Because we'd have Dragon
Listen.
Leg.
3 years is a long time, but it's not,
It's not in jiu-jitsu
Forever.
years.
and it's also.
Think about how long Aaron Milan's been at this.
Aaron Milan has been training for 18 years.
Wow.
3 years is not quite 18,
Yeah.
and I just don't want to create an affiliation or create my own entity with people who aren't going to be there for 25 years, 30 years, 70 years, 100 years.
Absolutely.
I want the people that are going to leave by 5 years to be gone by now. You know what I'm saying? Like, as shitty as that is, like the people who, hey,
We don't need to start purging, you know.
No, I'm not purging. I'm
just saying.
I'm not purging anything. I'm not purging anything.
dissidents or anything.
The
but-
reality
yeah,
is there's a lot of turnover in the jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
world.
I'm with you though. I see your word. I really do.
I just want to, like, my family's never left. We are all assholes and we get in fights all the time, but they've never left. So I want my jiu-jitsu to be the same way.
Yeah.
I want people to have problems and create issues and dilemmas for people to solve, and then you come back and you solve them
Yeah.
instead of run away from them.
And
If
that's
you run
what-
away from my
right.
problems, fat, cancer-ridden asshole guy.
That's
You
my experience here. Is that it's not
won't
like
be
it's
welcome
not as
in my
though
life
people
anymore.
don't bicker, but
If you want to
know,
bicker with
there's-
me, do it,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
come back to me
absolutely.
and be like, "Hey,
Absolutely.
we
yeah.
found common ground." Don't bicker with me and then leave and be like, "You were wrong. That's why I'm not talking to you." It's like, okay, tell me why I'm wrong. prove to me why I'm wrong, help me figure out why I'm wrong,
Right, yeah, sure.
and then
sure.
you're my friend. But don't be like, don't ever do anything with me if you're not going to do it all the way. Basically, is my point.
This is a point that I make with people a lot of times too, like, or like, I think Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand. Yeah, thank you. Ayn Rand said something to this effect, right? She got asked like, you seem so divisive. Like, can't you just find like some shared agreement? And her response was like, no, I'm not interested in that at all. In fact, I want to find shared disagreement, and sometimes like shared disagreement is okay, right?
Well, that's probably the most common.
Yeah, exactly.
Way to relate.
Well, right. Like, liberty is in a sense like, yeah, you and I disagree, so fucking swivel. I don't give a fuck.
Right.
Like,
yeah, you guys are about to run into each other. Yeah, okay. Swerve away from each other.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, swivel. Fucking swivel. That's a great way to put it. Fucking swivel.
I've had to swivel, I suppose, in the last.
Well, yeah. Listen, I agree with you. I feel like I've been swiveling a lot lately. Steve's been swiveling. I know he has. Swivel. That's a beautiful word.
Yeah. It's battery button thing.
Oh, damn.
Okay. I don't know if I should say this on camera because this is freaking shit. But honestly, I'm pretty comfortable saying all this. So, my mom had I spent a week with my mom, kind of on vacation earlier this summer. And
I enjoyed this story.
For a number of reasons.
Exactly.
I don't know which story he's thinking of.
I know what we're talking about.
We'll see. So my mom basically, kind of for a number of reasons, partially I gave her this book to try to read.
Oh man, okay.
But I think that's may or may not have been. Well, I think she got sent
Especially for
her
we
mother.
should. Camille. Yeah.
Sorry.
I didn't actually.
Camille
We
Paglia
read from that last week, yeah?
Yeah.
We'll read it. I want to read another poem. I have another poem. It's a really good one. It's really, really good.
Well, the master herself, at any rate.
Yeah. Anyhow, so I try to have my mom read that. I think through reading that, she kind of got an idea of like how intense my reading's been for the last long while.
Yeah.
Is this the same story?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know what you're saying.
There's
But also,
so
can I preface?
dude.
I just like the part. I just like in my head when I asked your mom while they took me pleasantly to see Paul Simon. In the car we had some beer, and then in the car she was kind of grilling Stephen about what he's been doing with himself lately, and I was like, I don't know if it's a rude thing to ask her, but I was like, do you think what Stephen's doing is hard work? And she answered. She said yeah.
Wow.
She said yes. But
Yeah.
I like that Stephen went on to do what he did.
Well,
Because it proved my point, which is fucking that it's probably the hardest one that I can like.
Well, to put something in
Hardest
perspective,
work.
like that book
In a
is.
sense.
I think I don't mean to keep it.
Sorry.
Keep
say what you
your thought. I'll be really
got all
Steven's
night.
got it.
But I
Yeah,
really
Steven's
think
got
that
it.
this book is far heavier than like Fight Club or something like that. Like right.
Dude,
Your
it's a
your
good
mother
book.
would probably be or the average.
It
audience
should
would
be
I
as-
will
it
say, I will
both of
say
these
I
books,
had an entirely
They should be like
psychedelic
this.
experience.
They should be like
reading
these.
it.
It should be like
So-
this. How about that, Steve?
Well, they're really they do belong. They belong with each other. It really should be like.
Yeah.
It should be like this.
I want to. Wait, how do you analyze that?
Sure.
It should be like this book is like growing out of this book.
Yeah.
And then slowly falling over until someone keeps it upright. No, so my mom kind of through this week got an idea for how intense my reading and just like I had been lately and kind of partially like the writing experience too and like what that's been like for me. So basically, she being concerned with me says you need to start seeing shrink or not. It's not like you need to. She's like you should like go see a shrink because you should go see a psychologist. It'd be good to have someone to talk to.
It's a good backboard.
And I was like, if it was the right person, sure. If it was the wrong person, it could be really disastrous.
Yeah.
I thought about it and I was like, because I wouldn't be paying for that because that's not something I can pay for right now. So my response to that was, okay, if you want me to see a psychologist and I'm willing to pay for that, pay for someone who's like basically a physical therapist, but not like essentially pay for like a movement coach or a sports
Someone who can
medicine
get Steve's
person.
shoulders and hips moving.
Yeah. So exactly, like someone who can like kind of weekly help my body recover from training, and then
It has
also
to be so weak. It has to be so weekly.
increase my range of motion. Really, all of us should be doing this.
Always. Yeah, my back is so fucked.
In my head, I think we should have people like that working out of the gym.
Yeah.
Right,
If we
right.
became
People
like
ask
a
me all
top
the time.
level club, we would need people like they have that like the high level MMA gyms, and they have it like. That's partially what
Incredible.
Faraz Sahabi tried to do with this Tim Tam thing too,
Right,
which
right.
is really
And the
But anyhow,
the
so
guy
I
he
said-
advertised at the end of his podcast,
right.
or
yeah.
the guy that trained George.
Right. So I've been I basically was like, let's make a deal, you know? So I tweaked, so now this is
2 months ago.
Months ago. So I tweaked my shoulder. So I actually went to a doctor and he basically told me nothing. I wanted to make sure there wasn't anything wrong. I didn't think there was. He basically said you have tendonitis in your rotator cuff. So I just strained this here, which could, if the rotator cuff's weak, I could hypothetically make it worse and tear it or whatever.
You
But right
had
now
a
it's-
surgery once upon a time.
I had
That was the
surgery
other
on
one?
this
Okay,
shoulder.
okay.
This was separate. It kind of was all of a sudden thing. And I don't really think it's that bad. But I went to a doctor and got a script for physical therapy. So my dad's insurance premium our deductible is so high that he basically wants me to figure out if it's cheaper to just pay the therapist out of pocket or have it done through the insurance.
He'd rather you pay the more expensive one.
Wow.
No, he's saying it might be cheaper to just pay the person for their time. So I was like, just get a sports medicine person. Exactly like I was asking you before I got hurt.
I wonder if they'd be willing to come here, Steve.
What I would like to do is I think we should have it's hard to do as a class though because everyone's different. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You want to have each
It's a
person
three-
getting separate work.
It's a 2 or 3 person maximum discipline. You can't be showing in an hour if you wanted to pay for them by hour. You can't have them showing 12 people what they should do specifically. You can have them going, hey, I'm going to have you do a squat and you're going to hold this bar out here or something. And I'll come around and show each of you how you should be doing it proper.
Right.
But you can't have them...
Also, if it's if this person's hip spine, and this person's ankle, this person's elbow.
Right. There's things I have to be working on with each of you.
This
I can't
person's-
do it with 20 people right now. I can do it with 5 of you or 4.
No, I think. But anyway, so I might actually get my wish and have someone.
I don't know how long we've been going.
I think 5 or 6 minutes.
Sorry, everybody. We still have things to work on, but it'll keep being
It's
skippy.
fine, it's fine. So I think I'm gonna basically get my wish and actually have someone to.
You have to find a good...
Yeah, I gotta find a
specialist.
good person. But I also gotta start reading more religiously the Kelly Starrett book, which I'm almost done with that book. Which is how to...
Shout out to the Supple Leopard.
Yeah, how to become a supple leopard.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
I gotta
I
do
knew
But
the name.
back to... let's go back to Camille.
Yeah.
Please, yes.
This is so. I'll preface this by touching our Fight Club conversation. I think part of what, and it's loosely touched on in the movie, but it's not really well, it ends up being a failed romance. So the other so if you can split masculinity, what Neumann does is he splits masculinity symbolically into a higher masculinity and a lower masculinity. So the lower masculinity is like the male aggressive chthonic instincts. So the chthonic instincts for male are, you can really see it as one instinct, which is the effective movement forwards, or the thrusting motion. But that's both aggressive and sexual.
You want to know what's...
Right. It can be the thrust of the sword or
sure.
It's sure.
Yeah.
That was so personal to me right now. Like,
I'm sorry,
like
man.
no, no.
Shit happens.
No, yeah, it's funny. That's fun to me.
So
That's funny.
they're fucking archetypes. They're
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's so personal. I'm the archetype, bro.
You're the vessel for the archetype, something like that.
I'm joking.
But
I'm joking.
I'm not.
He's not.
So, what Fight Club represents is like one half of that instinct almost, which is just
the forward,
aggressive, like the aggressive, non-sexual tendency. Like it's literally about the aggressive, like fighting side of that, like the conflicting part of the lower masculine infinite. This poem is kind of about the like sexual element, attractiveness. You'll see. But so that's why I
What's it called?
the once over.
Don't. Oh, I don't like that name.
This is a really good poem. Paul Blackburn.
I'll go ahead.
A little inspiration. Paul Blackburn, the once over. The tanned blonde in the green print sack, in the center of the subway car, standing, though there are seats, has had it from one teenage hood, one lesbian, one envious housewife, 4 men over 50, and myself. In short, the contents of this half of the car. Our notations are long legs, long waist, high breasts, no bra, long neck, the model slump, the handbag drape, and how the skirt cuts in under a very handsome set of cheeks, stirring dull roots with spring rain, saith the preacher. Only a stolid young man with a blue business suit and the New York Times does not know he is being assaulted. So, she has us and we her, all the way to downtown Brooklyn. Over the tunnel and through the bridge to DeKalb Avenue we go, all very chummy. She stares at the number over the door and gives no sign, yet the sign is on her.
I think my favorite line is very chummy.
Oh, my favorite line, this is for sure private. Stirring dull roots with spring rain, saith the preacher. What do you think of that poem?
I love that poem. I love Camille
I
Paglia.
enjoyed that thoroughly, yeah.
Shall we talk about the poem for a bit? Before
Before you launch in.
Are we back on?
Yeah.
So, Garrett, what struck you about that poem? And did you get what I was saying about like this representing the sexual half of the lower masculine instincts? Not entirely, I guess, but there's women also.
I think you'd have to probably read it to both of us for us to really, again.
Read it again?
I think so. You don't have to for the podcast, but I think if
You know,
you want us to analyze it truly.
I think you should. It's sometimes hard to hear everything for the podcast too. So yeah, I think it kind of hurt. There's a lot to that poem.
I'll
That was a heavy poem,
I'll
and,
read it
and I
again.
don't
I'll read it
necessarily disagree with you, but
Alright,
I'm thinking of like
let's
the
do
first.
this. Let's talk for a few minutes, and then I'll read it again. So first, just
So tell us
your first
what
impressions. What do you think's going on? Like, what do you think happened in the poem?
So, a priest was observing some beautiful, or a priest. What's the quote again?
Oh, stirring dull roots was saith the preacher.
Preacher.
I'm
The preacher is the
Okay.
person that the narrator of the poem. Yeah.
I don't think so. I think it's more just observational the whole way through.
I think he's kind of quipping. That would be what the preacher would say.
Yeah. I think it's just observation the whole way through. It's more impersonal than all that. I think.
So there is actually, you could say that the poem is, so it's Paul Blackburn's poem. So the poet is the subject because he gives a list of the people in the car. So when I read it again, listen for the list, that's who's in the car, and he lists himself. So he's, So
Okay.
you're right, it's, that self is observing. So it's, how Pally addresses it is she addresses it as like the poet. So, for example, this is the quote I want to read.
Okay. This is kind of why it's hard for me to read the double. I still don't understand what I'm reading when I read the double. Just so you're aware, I'm like
Yeah.
57 pages.
It's
in,
hard
like,
with the Russian stuff too. You have to be really good about the names to know who's talking. That takes a lot of time.
Confusing.
I've spent a lot of time learning the Russian patronymics or whatever, because after a while, I know, like, essentially what the Russian, you've run it, I probably should have told you this a long time ago. All the nicknames and shit are based on a scheme. So a lot of times you think it's a different name because there's a nickname and you're like not sure who it is. But the people, like the author's using the nickname that's like standard to the Russian language for that person, or they're using like the formal. So like if they do something like Vitaly Alexandrovich or something, and then
Vitaly
Vitaly,
Androvich is, or
right.
just like they shorten it
Right.
in some way.
So that's
That's
where I got
Have
that.
you read the double?
No.
This might be just my confusion, but I'm pretty sure this character is being called two different names, and he thinks he's one name.
Why that's fucking interesting.
He thinks he's one
Because
name.
That's exactly like Fight Club.
Right. And so
Which
that's
is,
what I think is going on, and that's why it's hard for me to even, because I've been able to do it for all the other stories. I've read
Right,
5 other stories by
Where
him,
you
and I could figure it out. But this one is like, he's walking away from a scene and he's thinking, and then it says, blah 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 said, but then it's like somebody calls to blah blah blah, and it's a different name. You don't understand what I'm saying? Like, and then I'm like, oh, this guy's thinking he is one person. That's a very confusing book to read, but it's so hard that I'm 37 pages in and I've read it for a week. So like,
Anyhow,
but that's
very
also how I read. I don't
Well,
read books fast at all.
you shouldn't.
Yeah,
read
it's-
fast.
Yeah.
Okay, so the reason she calls it I don't know, that's why she calls it the poet, is because it's like just referring to himself. And, okay, so for example, keep this in mind when I read it again.
Okay. Welcome back, everybody.
This is Pallia's essay about it. She writes, "The poet monitors the archetypal surge of instinct beneath the busy, brittle surface of modern life. He portrays the city as a million strangers in flux, who continually cluster and coalesce and break apart again. The poem itself is in process, splintering and consolidating before our eyes. Really, the main focus on that first sentence, though.
Yeah.
That really struck me. The poet monitors the archetypal surge of instinct beneath the busy, brittle surface of modern life.
Right. Well, it's also clarified by the next. They come together and then disperse.
Right. So you could say that in this. So this is like you could, to bring my point back around about Fight Club. You could say the poet monitors the archetypal surge of sexual instinct in this poem. In Fight Club, like
you could say it's
the Chuck Palahniuk or whatever monitored the archetypal surge of the aggressive instinct to fight beneath the busy, brittle surface of modern life.
Easy, and that makes so much sense in that story. Right. Like
that's what I was getting at. When I was trying to say, like,
it's
Fight Club focus on
busy
this one
and brittle
instinct.
is a good way to describe how they portrayed the city in that story.
Oh yeah.
Camilla's so smart. But
She
yeah,
really
you're right.
is
You can
so-
portray.
she
You
really
could.
is
You
so
could. You
smart.
could put
It's
that
ridiculous.
into any archetypal representation of man or of masculinity
Sure.
or femininity. Like you could say, sure, somebody's observing the matriarchal, whatever, on the brittle surface. Like if somebody's
if they were
talking,
doing it today,
any type of story.
If
Like-
it was set in busy, brittle, modern life, then yeah, that sentence would apply.
Sure.
And if it was representing a truly archetypal instinct rather than a, mere propagandistic ideal, like we talked
The
about.
one thing that's fun
Right.
about where we train and where we're based out of, and we're doing a lot of work out of this one spot, and a reason that I feel so comfortable with it is that a lot of the people that I've met through the spot that we're at, the gym, I'm thinking of it
The
literally like
place,
I'm
yeah.
walking in this front door, and when I go in this front door, it's a different world. There's a huge world in this gym that's
Sure.
very, I'm getting to the point.
It's sacred.
It's
right?
very,
It has, like, its own,
to me, it's
essence.
very, it's an interesting place where I can meet all these people, and I'm only meeting them surfacely. So I'm breaking through the surface of each individual so that I can, in essence, be breaking through it in a true. So if I break into the personality of each individual person that I'm training with, then in essence I've broken through truly through the surface of the entire community. If you don't go personally to each individual, not saying that I'd like try super hard to go meet all the new people, but
that'd be a little creepy, wouldn't it?
right. There's
I hope you don't.
exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Like there's a point where
Yeah.
you allow the people to come in and stay on the surface, and as maybe raindrops would do. Like some of them flood the earth, but some of them just seep down underneath.
Yeah.
Some of them.
Conroy will flood your fucking earth. So I'm going to respect that guy. I'll pay attention to Conroy because he floods my earth. He doesn't sink down.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
That's how white belts work. Like, but anyway, what I'm saying is that people in this gym are very symbolic. The way I perceive people and like interact with people is like I really analyze what symbol they're portraying and what type of character they're playing. I pay attention a lot to that. I pay attention to what game they're playing.
Yeah, I mean, if I may, I don't think.
Yeah, you may. Yeah, you may.
I don't think.
I'm thinking that everyone's playing games, Garrett.
I don't think so much people are symbolic as.
Well, the way I perceive them is probably more symbolic than that. Yeah.
Not that they're not portraying their symbols, but that, like, I mean, you are in some sense a part of your world beyond the world.
Right, right. I'm doing what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm
which
doing.
is no criticism at all.
I'm not
Obviously, I
criticizing.
Yeah.
I'll say this, because I was interested by everything you just
I
said.
saw what you turned your chair towards me.
Neumann would say our initial method of conscious reception is through a symbolic image.
Yeah. That's
Oh,
my
right, yeah,
easiest.
So everything we know, we've interpreted through symbolic representations of the instinctual behavioral patterns that make up our day-to-day. So we've had these behaviors and we've symbolized them like on cave paintings to begin with,
Sure.
something like that. And that's how we've developed an understanding of what we know. So like when you say I come in here and people portray themselves as symbols on the surface to me, because you're right, you don't
Well,
know you don't know the entirety of someone when you interact with them here or anywhere.
Right, nowhere.
And so
Yeah, I'm doing this always.
So
I'm doing this
what-
always.
And the way Peterson kind of says it is what's mapped first is the symbolic substrata of what rises from unconscious to conscious is that process is the mapping of the symbol.
That's
So
the
when-
meaning. That's the point of his whole first book.
Right. That's what. Because a map. This is an interesting thing to know.
Complete thought.
No, finish that.
No,
It was a complete thought.
We left off with maps.
Like, so, but that schema is the symbol in a sense. Like
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
the point of contact for the conscious
Right.
system when dealing with the entire matrix of information, of possible information. The one that
Yeah.
jumps out and grips onto your attention, those symbols are how we perceive the world. So it's like
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
what
when
you were
when
saying,
people act,
what you were saying as a person, like personally,
Yeah.
you come in here.
all I'm trying to
me,
do is be that perceiver.
That's what.
You
Yeah,
know,
it helps
you know?
to know what you're doing for sure. Yeah.
Trying to figure out what I'm doing by basis on what other people are doing. As shitty, to me that sounds shitty.
Right.
To me that sounds like I'm caring too much about what people are doing. But that's what I'm doing every day, and I'm trying to figure out how to make that work. Because I literally,
Oh,
But I feel like that's caring too much.
I don't know, but that's just what I've learned. Like, don't care what people say. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just I'm trying to perceive
sure.
what the negative connotation of what I'm doing is, and what the positive connotation. I feel, if I may be as narcissistic as possible, I feel like my natural rhythm would be to be as coherent to all people as possible. So when I do interact with people, I try to get on their barely their good side. You know what I'm saying? Like when I meet people, I try to just be like, all right, I'm not offending you but I'm also not gonna offend myself or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And my point being, I feel like my natural connotation with everybody would be just get by and then you can go home. So when I have to be at this spot for so long, I'm going to have to deal with a lot of people for a lot longer than I normally do.
Sure.
So I have to like extract what they're doing all the time. And a lot of people are very interesting, and I have to be like,
they all are. Yeah,
I have to really concern myself with what they're doing, even though I don't want to. It happens, and I just do it, and I will talk about it on podcasts like I've done, and I don't necessarily do that with everybody, and I try to keep my ability to interact with people's emotions as at the smallest level. I don't want to interact with people's emotions, or as Jordan Peterson would say, their beliefs. I don't want to interact with those. I want to see what they're doing at a symbolic level, I guess, as what I would say.
Interesting, yeah.
Well, you don't want any more.
I don't want any more baggage. I don't want the baggage of
There's
you.
you
don't want that.
whether you like it or not, you come in here with a task in mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you don't want to have to deal with any more information from people that is necessary to accomplish that
my goal.
task.
Yeah.
So like we have like a mutual aim, enough so that we can all come here and do something.
Yeah, to the point
When
where there's
more
300
things-
people here that we're
But if you
dealing
think about it, like it just has to be like that, because if we all just knew each other's, everyone comes in, and that's kind of the great thing about coming here is like everyone has their shit, and it's like you just get to
makes my body feel weird. Think about everybody's
Right.
everything. Like,
well, I mean, everyone has their complicated lives.
I
and,
know, it makes my
their
life
personal
entirely stressed out to think
catastrophes.
about that.
And it's like we come here and we just forget about that enough to get a little better. And,
Right, and
yeah,
then the
well,
more
and you can
listen to
only
them,
and you get to talking with people and they tell you what's going on just a little bit.
and they'll tell you a whole lot of more bits, and they'll
Well-
tell you all the bits, and then they'll tell you all your bits, and then they'll tell you about you, and then they'll be like,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is if
talk about
people tell you
the
about
gentleman that
you, that's always fun.
someone that recently inspired me was a gentleman that brought up dreams, and
Here?
yeah. I don't necessarily know if I want to bring up his name.
No, but no. If he didn't something like we.
Yeah.
Like,
But anyway, it brought my attention back to something that I've always been interested in, no matter. No, I'm not talking about Mike.
I know, but we brought Mike up by name, and now we're saying that we're not going to bring someone up against their.
Well,
which is-
no, because well, listen
There's
to
a lot
this.
of Mikes.
Mike is Mike Carpenter's a very smart guy, and he's never done anything wrong in his life. He's a fucking gen. Whatever, he's a fucking mensch. So, anyway, this guy I'm talking about maybe doesn't want his name on the internet. That's why I'm not saying it.
Oh, okay.
But he brought to my attention how powerful dreams were, which is something I've lived by my entire life, because
Makes sense.
dreams, by Norman's perspective, would probably be even more symbolic than the way you perceive reality. I don't know if that's something that he touches on, or
He talks about dreams.
Of course we
Basically,
know that.
basically the union.
Talks about dreams, man.
he talks about dreams, dude. That's what he does.
So, speaking of symbols, now that you brought up dreams loosens your perceptual system, so you get this wave of loosely connected symbols, and then you try to find the connections, and that's what like a dream analysis is, or whatever. It's like, why are these symbols concurrent, and how do they relate, and what is the meaning of these symbols coming up together? But part of what Jung's thinking led him to believe was that level of consciousness where we're just getting hit with symbol after symbol, and it's not all tied together, and it's imagistic, and in a kind of loose, not quite articulable narrative sense. where it's like a movie where you know what you've seen, but you can't say the word. Like, you can't say what it was about. I really like I think this idea is represented unbelievably well in Kashmir by Led Zeppelin. So, so the essentially.
I think that
basically the essence is I cannot recall the words, but the story was quite clear. Songs of lilting grace, sounds caress my ears. The words I can't recall, but the story was quite clear. Something like that. So a dream's something like that. It's this loose amalgamation of symbols. Jung's idea was that level of consciousness that's immersed in this loose connection of symbols is operative all the time. And then some of the time, there's an operative layer of consciousness making objective sense of things. And so that turns off when you go to sleep, and you still have this operative dream layer. But the thing about that is the dream layer is working when you're awake as well, which is what he thinks can account for extreme experiences where things like space and time can actually seem to bend. Because you already have this, it's not that you're, basically one way to think of it is you're never not dreaming.
Right.
Sometimes
Right.
you're awake.
yeah,
Right.
or yeah, half the time.
But
maybe.
even when you're awake, you're still immersed in the dream.
Talk and song
Yeah.
from tongues of lifting grace. Sounds caress
I
my
always
ear.
thought it was lilting.
Hey, listen, we're talking about
Is it really?
metrolyrics.com. Talk and song
Look that up
from
on somewhere else.
Alright.
I'm gonna be really bummed if it's not lilting grace. I always think it's interesting when I mess up word lyrics, or song lyrics. I wrote a poem once called Lilting Grace about this guy who hangs out in this record store on the corner of State and Packard. He doesn't work there, but he just hangs out there all day. He's just listening.
Talk and songs from tongues of lifting grace.
I always thought that was lilting. I think lilting sounds better, honestly.
Oh, yeah, lilting.
Oh. You gave me a heart attack.
Sorry, what did I say?
I was so sure.
Lifting?
Lifting. I was so sure about that.
Sorry, I got bad eyes, everybody.
Where's lilting?
Talk and song from tongues of
Lilting grace sounds caress my ear.
Not a word could I relate.
Not a word I heard could I relate, yet the story was quite clear. That's what dreams like.
Sorry, everybody, I'm bad at reading and seeing. All I know how to do is grapple.
If you say so.
I do. Anyway, we could listen to a song right now, or we could,
No, you were gonna say something about. You might have lost it. But you were gonna say something about dreams in relation to
Oh.
being here.
Okay. I was gonna say that, yeah, dude. A gentleman
Oh, that's right.
that I will not say the name of, brought up a scenario where he had a dream that completely changed his life. And to cap the story quickly, he was living in a downtrodden area and had to get by robbing people and being a thief. And one day had a dream while he was on parole or waiting for sentencing of a felony charge. He was going to jail for, I don't know how long, or prison, how long, do you remember?
Basically,
How long was he in
Our
prison?
friend had a dream that he was in, I don't know.
Okay, well, anyway, I'll get to that.
Few
I'll get
years.
to that. I was just curious about that. Anyway. Anyway, it's a good start.
It is a good story. So basically, he has a dream of robbing someone, beating them, putting them in a trunk, and he's going to shoot them. And then he has a realization in the dream that he's just done this all to himself.
And the person he's about to shoot is him. And when he pulls the trigger, he wakes up. And at that moment, he is no longer a thief, and no longer a he's
very
never done it
corrective.
again.
It was a corrective dream.
It was a corrective dream, and so something. Long story short, we
that
may
is
have not needed to tell that story, but
It
that's
is
a very
it is
important
a-
thing to me.
It is an incredible dream.
Having told that story was very meaningful to me, and I respect the person that told me to my grave. I'll probably respect them for that,
Yeah.
because it made me really, really start being curious about something I've probably been curious about my entire life, which is dreams. So, thanks to him, I've really analyzed all of the dreams I've ever had, honestly, and how they've changed my life. And one thing that I really want to understand is how dreams can be. So this is something I think I said on the first podcast actually, but I want to understand how dreams can be so unfortunate, and then not that I want to know how they do it, but I just want to learn about it more or something. I don't know. But you can have such a shitty dream, and then you wake up in such elation about how not shitty your life is anymore. Or you can have a dream about how great things could be, and then you wake up really upset about how things are. And that conundrum fucking pisses me off. Because it's like, how weird is it that you can imagine so
well,
easily?
either way, it's motivating.
Yeah.
You learn,
yeah,
you
yeah,
learn
right.
something-
So
you
one
learn
thing
something either way.
that I've enjoyed about Jordan Peterson, or maybe somebody else, I don't know who really brought this to my light, is the evolutional path that dreams create. The evolutionary reason for dreams. That's one thing that I think I need to look into. The biological necessity for dreaming.
Yeah. I mean,
Because there has to be one, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's
We
the
do it
story, I
so
guess.
commonly, and people talk about it so often, and people are so elated by them and so fascinated by them that there's no chance that there's not a reason for it.
I mean, I guess that's the story that we say, but it's like almost a sort of truism that we tell ourselves. Because like when it comes right down to it, it seems like all our dream work comes down to like not a whole lot. Like I don't think we know a whole lot about dreams really.
No, not
You know what I mean?
Right.
Um,
Yeah, no,
I
not a
mean,
whole
that-
lot. That's
that-
why.
If your
yeah, sure.
here's the thing though, if your definition of a dream is such that it includes, it's essentially the elucidation of things that aren't known, then by nature the dream is, by your definition, we don't know a lot about dreams, if that's what a dream is, you know what I mean?
right.
Right.
I mean, granted, but like you're getting like borderline poetic with me right now, though, right? Like, I mean,
Talking about dreams.
like, well, sure, but like, I mean, it is kind of strange, like, in a sense, like, we haven't really learned anything since like Neumann, right? I mean,
No, I think Peterson's gone a step farther than
you
Neumann.
think?
With his incorporation of neuroscience, absolutely.
Well,
It's a
so that's what I mean, though. Like what
No,
about
so-
the neuroscience did?
So
like,
then you start getting into what parts of your brain are getting activated and the communication between hemispheres and shit like that.
I think you're overstating the case, man. That's hand wavy stuff, as far as I'm concerned. I mean,
What do you mean?
there's lighty stuff. Like there's scans where there's lighty stuff that happens, and
People
and,
scan the brain during all sorts of activities to see what parts are electromagnetically
okay, so it's just an appeal
activated.
to. It's literally just an appeal to authority.
An appeal to electromagnetic authority, or what?
Well, yeah.
I'm not.
No, I don't care.
Yeah,
What,
we don't know what kind of. We don't know that
I don't care what authority. You're just saying that there's scientists that look at
I'm not
lights.
arguing with you that dream science and brain science isn't in a. We know very little.
I'm saying you're appealing to authority.
Okay, this.
Calling me a socialist.
I'm not an expert on the brain or on the science of dreams.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I do think we've come farther than Neumann, because I think, to the best of my knowledge, there are 3 thinkers who have, and there are 3 people in this realm of thought, according to Peterson, who have written these books about the collective dream, which is essentially the mythological record. Jung, Neumann, and Peterson. Peterson's gone farther in his understanding because he's incorporated neuroscientific information that wasn't available. I'm not saying that's like a wealth of neuroscience information. It's still in its infancy. But we know more about how the brain's communicating and what parts are on and off.
It's not even so much that I'm saying that you're wrong, but like you're just not giving me like any data. You know what I mean?
We don't.
Wait.
So what I was gonna say is that I'm not calling you a liar with regard to dream stuff, with regards to the claim that we have made progress with regards to dreams, and we probably have. I mean, I'm making a pretty extreme claim when I say that we haven't made any progress since Neumann, because that's a lot of years. But I think dreams are pretty mysterious. From what I've seen, and I've talked to a lot of dream researchers, and I've talked to like graduate students in dream labs and stuff. I don't think that they've really come up with a whole lot, as far as I can tell. I don't know what like Peterson is up to. I have Maps of Meaning on my bookshelf, and I've read the first chapter, but I have not read anything else. I listened to him talk about dreams. I've never actually heard him talk about like a whole lot of evidence with regards to dreams.
First of all,
I'm not talking about evidence-based mythology.
The best. Do you want me to actually read you some stuff? This will be really interesting.
Are we about to read Maps of Meaning?
No, I'm going to read quotes I pulled from the first biblical lecture for class.
You know, I want to say one more thing while you're pulling that up. I think one of the most overstated pieces of evidence, and people do it all the fucking time.
Overstated pieces of evidence.
It is neuroscientific evidence. No, just brain damage. Just brain damage. They bring up an image and they say, "See, we found that when you think about this, that brain area X, you know, the fucking premedial frontal cortex, lights up, and so that's all that we figured it out." It's like you didn't learn anything. All that we learned in like social and personality psychology, and you just happen to have this one technique where you can now look at the brain and you can see where some blood flow is and whatnot. You haven't actually learned anything. You just learned the correlates to this process that we already learned more about in like the 60s and 70s. That's usually how these things go.
Peterson's simply trying to see if the neuroscientific data corresponds with his understanding of how these abstract systems of the conscious and the unconscious are interacting.
Right. Okay, fair enough.
And what he's found is that it does indeed correspond and support
what I think is
the interaction between the conscious system and the unconscious system.
I think what you said just now is best. He's trying to be fair enough with the fact that he is diving into dream mythology, psychology.
These were some of the most profound things.
He's trying to be fair enough. It is a, as Joe Rogan would say, a woo-woo.
Right, that's my worry. Yeah.
But you've got to get as close to how it helps evolution, in my opinion, as possible, and how it works with everybody's day-to-day.
Yeah, but right. That's what I'm wondering about.
I wanna
Does
know-
this- how does this comport to our day to day? Because when you talk about evolution,
Everybody learns from their
we all
dreams
grant-
all the fucking time. Everybody learns from their dreams
when
all
you
the
talk
time.
about evolution,
and
though,
I want to know
we
why.
all grant that we are meat machines. Like nobody is like, oh, well, like dreams, and we looked at the brain, and we saw like brain lights, and so we just figured out.
Everyone thinks we're meat machines.
Everybody in this area, nobody's being convinced by dream studies where we look at the brain that we are not meat machines or that we are.
That we're not floating in space through entire space. What are you talking about?
The depth psychological field.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think people
depth
think we're
psychology
Stardust?
purports the existence
Okay, so we're now meat pockets.
Well, that too.
of the self, which has no
Yep.
which is something other than pure biological meat. Whatever the self is, depth psychology believes that it's something other than just believes that it's not just perishing flesh.
Mm-hmm.
Now, interestingly enough, I think Peterson includes that notion of the self, which he believes evolved, so to say, from man's belief in the immortal soul. So the mythological projection of the cross-cultural mythological projection of the immortal soul that has culminated in the Western idea of the self, or whatever. That's not a purely neat thing. Now, they don't exclude that from being an evolutionary notion. They try to essentially articulate a way where we could see ourselves as creatures with an evolved biology and understand how we've come to think of ourselves as vital in the process of our own being, as opposed to just seeing ourselves as meat machines, which people do see. I mean, that's a more
meat machine is a nihilistic thing to say.
No, it's not. It's just a materialistic thing to say. Those are totally different things. I'm just begging the question for one thing.
Worth something, huh?
I'm just begging the question for one thing, and I can follow you down the road. I agree with everything that you just said. I really do. I just don't think neuroscience speaks to anything that you just said.
I think
like in one way or the other.
I don't think neuroscience, by your definition, speaks too much. Like anything, like. By the way you describe it, it doesn't really.
It doesn't.
Well, yeah, that's probably true.
I'm not denying
here's
that.
Here's the thing.
Neuroscience
here's the thing. If you're
neuroscience is
here's the thing.
It's neuroscience is you can only infer certain things.
Doing MRIs is
Garrett.
By your
Garrett.
No, yeah.
It doesn't disprove it, and that's the thing.
No, that's my point. Yeah, that's exactly my point.
That was not your point the entire time.
Well,
but.
It could be.
It's a big.
No. My point is that it does not speak to this supernatural woo-woo bullshit.
Right.
It only speaks to the material stuff.
Yeah, but okay.
Exactly.
Can I
it
ask
doesn't
you a
prove
question?
it nor disprove it. It doesn't speak to it. Whereof the material neuroscience cannot speak. Thereof it should not speak.
There's a difference between talking about the self and dreams in particular. The way I would tie them together is to say that hypothetically. The self is the subject of dreams, or is subjected to dreams. But
you think the subject of all dreams is the self? You think that the narrative of all dreams is the self?
No, I think you could make an argument that often the subject of the dream is perhaps as close as you. Some version of yourself is what the dream is subject to.
You're drawing it from one of your perspectives.
And sometimes it's a very deep part of yourself that's subject to the dream. Sometimes it's the most central aspect of yourself.
Is the most central aspect always what's going on in your day-to-day life? No.
I mean, it depends. People dream about all sorts of things.
No, I mean, when you're walking around, is it not always have to be your most apparent ideas? Because you're literally, I mean, we're walking. You can't not acknowledge what you're walking in front of. So that would be, in dreams, you can allude to all sorts of like, you could dream about
People run into
stabbing
shit all the time.
I do too.
I don't.
I know what you're saying too, but
Like,
my point
saying,
is
like,
that
I
my
can
point.
broadly like follow
So-
you down these paths, but like I don't understand like what you're saying. People will say things all the time.
I don't know what
Like,
you're saying either. But
What are you saying? I don't understand what I'm saying, and I understand what you're saying. So I'll put that out there. I'm not. I mean,
what? So what? Are you like dissatisfied with the role that neuroscience plays, or it just doesn't?
okay.
no,
It doesn't even deserve to be brought up in a discussion of dreams.
No, I
wasn't
just
here,
don't think
but,
you're speaking to anything.
I don't think I was either.
You haven't
I wasn't.
asked me to. You haven't asked me to
No, I've asked you to like, or I guess I'm trying to
call
ask you like,
forth any.
to just explain to me like how neuroscience has any connection to dreams.
I have no clue.
And you've just talked about dreams, but not neuroscience.
Okay.
I don't know about neuroscience at all, bro.
Since, as I
What are you
said,
talking
I know.
about? Like, why would you have ask me? I didn't even graduate fucking high school.
I'm just like wondering. So like it's not that I even disagree with like what you're saying about dreams per se. It's just that like what I asked was like, what's the connection between neuroscience and dreams? And then you just talked about dreams.
That's all
As
there
far
is.
as
You never actually asked me that. Interesting.
All I'm asking about is
Okay.
You didn't.
Well, it is on camera,
you just
so.
rip. We can watch back the tape, but basically.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hope.
So you basically just told me that neuroscience doesn't speak to dreams,
That's not what
and
I
that we haven't learned anything about dreams
said.
since Neumann from a neuroscientific perspective.
I did say something like that, and I asked you what we have learned, and then you talked about dreams, and you didn't talk about the connection between dreams
Well,
and
and
neuroscience.
I
as far as
said
can tell.
before I was
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't
gone
know.
off on tangents that people scan people while they sleep, and they see what parts of the brains are activated and disactivated, and so on and so forth.
So the connection between dreams and neuroscience is people scan
No.
people while they sleep. Dude, this is what I mean. That's just an appeal
Can
to
I
authority.
finish the fucking? I can actually tell you something.
Okay.
People have an idea of what certain parts of the brain's functions are. So you
Sure,
see
sure. Yeah.
which areas are functional during the time you're dreaming, and see what those functions are. So let's say the brain's your hypothalamus is active, or let's say this is a serious callback, and this isn't in my area of expertise, but basically what I think is interesting is that they basically see a decrease of upper brain function during your sleep. So there's not a lot of, it's not like your brain's lit up like you're watching a movie. It's more like it's kept quiet, and the part of your brain that essentially. So yeah, that's more or less my understanding of what we know about what's happening during the brain while you're sleeping. The reason that makes sense, given Neumann's understanding, and so I'll read a quote from this thing I pulled for class, which was Jordan Peterson's Introduction to the Idea of God lecture at the beginning of the biblical series.
Okay.
He talks a lot about dreams. Jung believed the dream was doing its best to express a reality that was still outside of fully articulated conscious comprehension. So the reason that makes sense in relation to the information I just gave you is because the parts of your brain that are speaking while you're dreaming, according to these electronic mappings, are the instinctual parts that are below consciousness, literally.
Mm-hmm.
And they're speaking up to consciousness.
Like figuratively below consciousness. Right?
No, like literally below your mind, like
No,
literally.
no, dude. Consciousness is not a literal thing where it's just like an up and down.
Right, but if
Figuratively.
you take these brain ideas about the functions,
Metaphorically.
no, physically
as
your
opposed to literally.
physically your amygdala is below your cortex.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Fair enough, go ahead.
Yeah.
So
That's-
if you take the
that's
function of
factual.
these areas,
When we say subconscious, we don't mean like
right?
when
but
you stand
what
up straight,
Peterson's
like-
trying to do in part.
No, but
is
yeah, you have
map-
to, right?
No, this is
Okay, go
partially
ahead,
what
go ahead,
Peterson's
yeah.
trying to
Go
do, is take what's understood about the neuroscientific functions of the brain and map it onto the depth psychology ideas.
Okay.
That's part of his project. It's a really effective part of his project too.
This is what I mean. Like these are very rudimentary ideas. These are not like
What's
Peterson's original
rudimentary?
ideas.
Rudimentary. I talked for
What's
5.
rudimentary about it?
I mean, listen.
What's
I asked you
what
what
part of the word
I asked you
rudiment-
what we found since Neumann. These are not things that we found since Neumann.
Yes, they are. Peterson talks
They're
about
not
these.
things that Peterson
Neumann
discovered.
died, and
So like when you cite Peterson, you
right, but
no,
the neuroscientist that Peterson cites, who Jock Painsex
This is why I
one,
keep saying
and
that I don't disagree with
the
you. I'm
Russian
just
dude-
asking you to like explain the relationship between neuroscience and dreams.
I did.
And like you just keep
Yeah,
going into
okay,
other
I did.
things that like not.
I gave you specific parts of the brain.
You're going into tedious nonsense that like you don't just. Don't
What do you want me
answer
to
my
do?
question.
Explain it to you, or avoid tedious nonsense?
I keep telling you to go on. So okay.
You need to shut up again.
Really? Why you say that?
I hear it. My bad.
Yeah.
I think because you guys are going on in circles.
Okay, I'll say this. I specifically explained the parts of the brain that are, to the best of my knowledge.
Dude, and I totally agree with
According to
that.
this
I totally agree with the things that you're saying, and that's fine. I mean,
Why is that non-specific?
What do you want to know about dreams
Right.
that we haven't touched?
like
So-
you
My idea of what dreams are for.
So like
Wouldn't necessarily
you could
be-
tell the entire story that you told without any reference to any specific
Neuropsychology
region of the
or
brain.
neuro-
So that's what I was wondering. Like
Right, but
you-
it helps to be able to tell it with a specific region of the brain.
But
Because if you know the
Which-
function of that region of the brain, then you can guess as to what's actually happening from an evolutionary
You don't-
functional perspective while the dream
Do you
is
think it
occurring.
matters what's going on with brain chemistry at all? Like,
of course, yes. You haven't talked about brain chemistry though. Like we've been talking.
What do you
You've been
mean?
giving me the same
What do you mean?
cartoonish story
What is it?
that I'm quite familiar with, and I totally agree with. It's not that I disagree with it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Like, okay.
What is the contribution? Right, like I'm asking a specific question about what is the contribution that we've had since Neumann, and
It
you told me that it was
the
Peterson
idea
in
that
particular.
your amygdala-
So I'm wondering where like Peterson in particular comes into it, and you
Okay.
told me this again, this story that I agree with. It's not that I disagree with this story.
You don't
It's a
think that
cartoonish,
the-
basic story
you don't think
that
the
you
idea-
learn before you learn the specifics of neuroscientists or neuroscience, and that's fine. I don't disagree with it.
You don't think it supports the hypothesis. So Jung has a belief. This is what Jung's
The narrative
belief.
that you're telling
This
me
is what Jung's
is
belief
consistent with with
Do you believe
uh,
that the cortex is where most of your, particularly for most people, the left cortex is where most conscious endeavors are occurring or whatever? That's where that's the articulated center of your knowledge base.
the frontal temporal premenal frontal cortex is by all means the center of
Okay.
deliberate thinking, of conscious thought, of all those things. And by all means, no, it is not.
Do you believe that your hypothalamus and amygdala are not responsible for conscious functions and represent rather primordial instincts that were operative long before the cortex evolved out of those lower systems?
Getting borderline woo, but yeah.
That can be traced across species.
On
That's a cross-species observation. Like,
sure.
we can trace those systems in other species, and we've evolved additional systems, and one of those is a massive cortex. You agree with that?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So then, this is Jung's belief about a dream. The dream was doing its best to express a reality that was still outside of a fully articulated conscious comprehension. So if you can look at someone's brain while they're asleep and see that it's the instinctual part that's activated and that the conscious part is inactive,
I would feel far more comfortable with like less woo terms. Like again, like
what is a woo term?
I don't know how to make it less.
Like deliberative
that
as opposed to
that idea of what's happening during a dream. If you grant those functions of those parts of the brain, how does that not support that idea of what's happening in a dream? And again, listen, man, I apologize. I'm not the foremost expert on this.
I feel like we are getting like far afield of the things that would be like more interesting for us to talk about.
No, not more interesting.
This is interesting.
Don't say that. That's a defense. I'm defensive over
so
dreams.
Like where I feel like we're talking past one another is like I agree with like virtually everything that you say. What I disagree with is like people do this all the time. They reference some study where they can point to some correlation of a brainstem, and they think that's definitive proof. It's just a non sequitur. It's just a non sequitur. I'm not even saying necessarily that you're doing
it's an interesting correlation.
Sure. But people do this all the time, and they do this with everything, and they think it's
we're not doing it with everything.
My level of analysis, you have to understand. Right now.
Fair enough.
Gary, you have to understand me personally. My level of analysis. So I've even, to me, the depth psychology is subordinate to the narrative level of analysis. I've said I want to be a storyteller, an author.
Yeah.
So in my hierarchy of like, to me, it's like my experience, my memory of my experience, like my sensory memory of my experience, what I can recall of it. And I use different lenses to be able to observe my own experience. One of those is one I've been relying on since I was very young is my experience reading literature, other stories. Another, more recently, since I was introduced to Peterson, has been this lens of depth psychology, the study of ourselves or whatever. Now, subordinated underneath that for me, which is this neuroscience field, which essentially I know mostly from hearing Peterson talk about how he uses that information to support his depth psychology ideas. So I'm not trying to use it as a proof or whatever, really.
Sure. Yeah. And
I think these narrative truth, like those, I really believe those are deepest. But it's interesting when you get then you can say I believe these things to be true from I believe these ideas to be true. Here are some scientific phenomena that support these ideas.
Right. So this is my word.
Really
this is my word. It is that like to put it in like almost the Firas Zahabi like terms. Where like you remember that conversation that Firas had with Joe?
Sure.
So you go first.
I think why do you say worry? Why does that worry you? Let me ask you this. Because to me, as someone who subordinates the scientific to the narrative truth, which I honestly, that's not, people are going to be like, oh, because I can imagine hearing someone say this and they're just riffing off Peterson's ideas. To me, this is a very old idea for me. Like that, I've always been most interested in stories.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
right. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
as someone who believes that that level of truth is higher in a sense than that of scientific truth, it doesn't worry me in any sense that the neuroscience doesn't speak enough to my ideas.
Nor should it.
About dreams, because I'm not subordinating my ideas about dreams to the science.
Right. Yeah.
I'm using the science to support my ideas about dreams.
I think you'll
so
agree
it's not
with
a worry.
what I'll say.
Why to you then is it a worry?
I think there's two different uses of narrative being invoked here, and one of them, like narrative in the deep sense, the sense that like Peterson would care about. Well, I have a sort of reverence for that, but then there's a different sort of narrative, and this is what I mean when I say woo and whatnot. Like there's a sort of woo narrative where it comes to neuroscience, like
Are you saying just generally?
It's far more rudimentary. It's discovered. It's discovered far less than anybody would give it credit for. Almost all that neuroscience does is confirm social cognitive personality.
Now I know what you're talking about with Rasahabi, because he used the same term. I get where I get much more where you're coming from, because I agree with you that there's a lot of scientific literature that's publicized, especially for everyday consumption, that assumes social, cultural norms, to use the popular term today. But I think, I agree, and and why I'd say it's not as deep in part is because it's just not as old.
Right.
So and Jung and Peterson and Neumann's kind of, this is when they start talking about alchemy, basically. So we're in it.
Because
they view the evolution of it, the study of alchemy, as the transition, as the connection point of the scientific to the mythological substrate. And it's as if they point to alchemy and say, your science is rooted in these mythological symbols, and these symbols portray our most basic behavioral instincts. And so they say, your science is still rooted in instinct. And it still has an instinctual motivated aim. And the place they use in human history to best prove that is in their study of alchemy. So when you say you want to, it's like you want to say why it's woo, and it's because
I'm literally gonna be so mad until somebody explains to me what they fucking mean by the word woo.
We'll circle back.
So for Asahabi,
I think we should circle back.
He didn't answer it for me. I listened to that podcast.
I think we should run down.
He didn't answer it.
Okay. So what do you think woo means?
I think I can do it. I think I can do it pretty concisely. But I feel like we should change this
about alchemy. You go to woo.
I feel like we should change this.
That's funny. That's funny. Enough about alchemy. Go to woo.
Really quick though. I just want to say that I feel like we had a big kind of hostile but
we're having a good time. We're having a good time.
We were,
Alright, so where do you want
we were though, and I really feel like we were just talking past one another, and this is coming back to the woo thing. Neuroscience. It's not that neuroscience is wrong. Neuroscience is it's by and large right. Neuroscience is not one of these people have the wrong idea about what neuroscience does. Neuroscience has not been in so late. Right now, as of 2018 and whatnot, and I'm not like a neuroscience per se or whatever. It has not been in the business of finding out a bunch of new things about human psychology that we did not know. It has been in the
I
business
agree,
of.
it's been stagnated for a while.
Well, it's not that it's been stagnated. It's always been from the start a confirmatory business, and people have the wrong idea about this. They think that we just look in the brain and that we see something, and that it tells us something all new and original that we didn't know. That's not how neuroscientists tend to work.
Observations
of
behavior.
We tend to confirm things that we already know. So if we already know some social process, some cognitive process, something that we have a fairly strict understanding of, then we can start to look in the brain, and we can then start to find the correlations where we start to make sense. So it's not so easy as like, well, you throw somebody. What worries me isn't even your understanding.
It's someone under a scan and saying this is what's happening when they're dreaming.
And so what worries me is that
it takes an entire separate systematic understanding of your systems of experience, basically. Your
all these different processes,
systems.
what they do, and then even then it's inferential and correlational, right? I mean, it's very tedious the way we go about this, right? And it's not so easy.
What's wrong with tediousness?
Oh, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it.
I will say this. I think it's staggering how well. It's absolutely staggering how Peterson's, in my mind, one of the most staggering things he does is give you an understanding of how these systems of thought work. So taking the idea of consciousness and unconsciousness and giving that a neuroscientific oomph behind it, let's say, where he can really point to different circuits that have been discovered, and he uses it, for instance, really how he uses it when lecturing, but it really does give you a wallop of effect hearing that, to know that, because, and here's why, man, is in part a lot of his ideas are very unscientific. They're not, a lot of his ideas are beyond what's provable about.
Right.
So when you get that little bit of evidence, I mean, and I get what you're saying, where these studies are they're difficult, and like we're not very far along in doing them, but he's able to give that bit of evidence to how these abstract ideas are functioning, and it makes them even more convincing to me in a large way, because like
no, that's right. So this is part of the trouble too, though, and there's been plenty of studies with regard to this, but you can just show somebody some brain scan and then just give them some bit of information. They all of a sudden believe it, like far more.
Right, but I mean, I was able to specifically tell you how these functions are.
Understand? I believe your narrative, right?
Right.
But like you understand why this appeal is like it's troublesome, and like I always kind of want the details. That's just kind of the person that I am. Maybe it's just like the skeptic in me.
Yeah.
But like I always kind of like want to know, like,
best to give you as much details.
You did just fine. Really. But like I don't think he did any worse than like most people that like appeal to that sort of
right.
thing.
But I think you're misunderstanding me when I'm not placing an emphasis per se on a scientific like I don't need a scientific confirmation of my ideas to believe they're true, but it can be even one step even more overwhelmingly convincing when then you do get a confirming piece of science, and that's
isn't that troubling though? I mean, like
I mean, it can be a relief too.
I mean, that's why it's troubling, though, right? I mean, it seems like it's troubling precisely because like you're getting this from like this statist engine that is like I mean.
What do you mean statist engine?
Well, like who do you think like supports the science on this thing?
I'm assuming that based on everything I've heard the man say, I'm assuming my source is speaking for himself.
Peterson.
Yeah.
Right.
That was my. I mean, and Neumann goes into some brain science per se,
yeah.
but it's not at the level of depth Peterson does, mainly because Peterson, I think, took kind of the rudimentary neuroscientific ideas Neumann put in here, and then essentially investigated them using the current research, and produced this really up-to-date perspective of how neuroscience relates to.
I guess that's
relates to the relationship between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, and the self and the Ouroboros matrix or whatever.
This is the narrative that I mean though. I mean, Newtonianism is a series of narratives. They're perfectly practically well, you know, in a pragmatic sense, they're just amazing. Like with medium-sized physical objects, they're just fucking amazing. The problem is they're all wrong. Like it's just a narrative. Like that's what it is. So it's like that's, you know what I mean. That's what that's what I'm wondering. Like, you know what I mean?
Right. And so what depth psychology, Jung and Neumann and Peterson look to essentially explain, to show that science is rooted in narrative. Jung looks to the alchemists to say, these were the ancestors of all the scientists. And there are clear mythological roots in their system of thinking. And therefore, since the scientists grew out of them, the scientists retain these symbols and modes of thought in their methodology.
So like maybe you're getting a step closer. Like, so is it like okay? So like I get a lot of Peterson's broader psychology with regards to his mental maps, like how his physical maps map onto his symbology.
Sure.
I get that aspect of the neuroscience. I guess if you just like apply that to dreams, then you can like say that there's like dreams are like what we do in our normal life, and then some, or something like that. But like I guess I don't get how this is not just like I don't get how any of the specifics with regards to like that picture is supposed to fit together, or like, you know, again.
Well, it's supposed to all. It's literally, and we've been talking about this for a while, but it's interesting because I'm trying to hammer this home.
Yeah.
Jung and Neumann and Peterson have a system of thinking about dreams that is outside of the neuroscientific realm. They give abstract terms to
maybe I need
types
to know
of
more
experience.
Okay, so yeah.
Essentially.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Like they've observed people telling them about their dreams. They see reflections of the mythological stories in the stories they're told about dreams, and through that Jung developed a system of thinking about the parts of a dream and a mythological story.
Okay.
And those are the component parts of the psyche or whatever.
Okay, so I mean even that sounds like a Jungianism, right? I mean like an extension of Jung's archetypes.
I was speaking specifically about Jung. That's what he did.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Neumann and Peterson. Okay.
I mean, is it good?
We're in it again.
Okay. So you're saying okay. So this is Peterson talking about Jung. Jung got very interested in dreams and started to understand the relationship between dreams and myths because he would see in his clients' dreams echoes of stories that he knew because he was deeply read in mythology. And then he started to believe that the dream was the birthplace of the myth, and that there was a continual interaction between the two processes, the dream and the story and storytelling.
The dream
And so Jung and Peterson, Jung developed a way of thinking about dreams that Neumann and Peterson and others have followed. It's an abstract way of thinking that's outside of neuroscience. But then when you have the neuroscience that doesn't contradict that story, and it in fact corroborates it,
Right.
it becomes, it's interesting.
No, it is.
And you're
It
right,
is.
like you're right in the sense like,
Yeah.
we don't have anything in neuroscience to prove that dreams are the birthplace of mythology,
Right,
or that we have a dreamlike layer of consciousness active all the time, even when we're awake and fully conscious. We don't have neuroscience to support those claims. Those are
right.
Those
right,
are beliefs based on experience. Like,
What?
I can say personally, I've had times where I'm awake where
That's exactly
it feels
what I mean.
like
we don't have.
I can't
What can
believe
you-
I'm
What can
dreaming,
you
not
use
dreaming, right?
as scientific evidence of what's going on while you're awake? Do you have any sort of,
neuroscientific evidence.
I don't know, do you have any evidence?
I mean, again, I think it would just be like it would just be correlative. You could look at like
Which is
prefrontal-
fine. If
Yeah,
you
no, yeah,
rely
yeah,
on
totally,
these other
totally.
forms of truth.
prefrontal cortex activity and stuff like that. And you'll be right, like almost all the time. You know what I mean? You'll find like some rare like coma patient or something that will like have a bunch of prefrontal cortex activity, but no, But yeah. I mean, you'll be right almost all the time.
Can I just read one more of these quotes? This is really funny. Jordan Peterson's a funny guy. People give him not enough credit for that. A thought appears in your head. What kind of ridiculous explanation is that?
Yeah,
That was the
right,
quote.
yeah.
Yeah, I've heard him say that. Yeah.
Well, like the trouble too. I mean, so this is a perfect segment. Neuroscientists will never find an explanation for that, ever.
So here's another. This is an interesting one.
Neuroscience. Like that's a point. I want to dwell on this for just a second. That's a point. You can go back to like Leibniz, and like you'll find almost like conceptual proof of this. You know what I mean? Like you just ask yourself, like go inside somebody's brain.
Alright. We're going. When it ends, it ends. Ladies and gentlemen, we are on the last
Athletic.
something. Toe. It's
You
probably
want to
not
do any
gonna
show and tell?
Always. We always gotta show some influence. We should change our Joni Mitchell.
Here,
Led Zeppelin.
I gotta read. This is maybe my favorite thought about dreams. The words from the third verse of Kashmir. I want to say it's the third verse. It might be the fourth verse. He goes, pilot of the storm that leaves no trace, like thoughts inside a dream. Pilot of the storm. I gotta read the whole thing. So that's the like functional part of the quote, but it takes him somewhere. I don't want to get the words wrong.
They're good though.
O pilot of the storm who leaves no trace, like sorts inside a dream. It's like thoughts inside a dream. Come on. O pilot of the storm who leaves no trace, like thoughts inside a dream. Here is the path that led me to that place, yellow desert stream. My Shangri-La beneath the summer moon, I really can't remember. But the idea there would be well, you're informed in the dream, and the thoughts that you get from the dream are left without a trace of the thing that left them leaves no trace. So like the dream informs you and you can't quite remember your dream. You know how when you wake up and you can sort of remember a dream, but not nearly all of it? The idea is that the dream's acting on you, and you'll have thoughts that day that, sometimes a thought during the day can trigger a memory of the dream too, which is an interesting thing. But your dreams influence you and inform you without you being aware of necessarily you not being able to articulate what they were. Right. That was the line I read at the beginning. But to me, that's a great line. The pilot of the storm who leaves no trace, like thoughts inside a dream. Which is that there's that's a deep. But here's another, so I was going to say this earlier. One thing you can't for sure corroborate with neuroscience is the idea of the pre-cosmogonic chaos that Jung and Neumann and Peterson employ to illustrate their thoughts on mythology. Like, you can say something like the right hemisphere is adapted to deal with something that we have been best able to represent perhaps as pre-cosmogonic chaos. But you can't like prove like a neuroscientific correlate for pre-cosmogonic chaos.
Yeah, no.
Although you can kind of say that's really, I take that back. Peterson says that's what happens when you are hit with anxiety.
I'm still dealing with that jalapeno.
Well, it's never so much asking for proof. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to find proof in almost any field. Certainly not with like regards to evolutionary claims, which are usually the more interesting neuroscientific claims. You're almost going to find like a bunch of...
He talks to this British guy for an hour. I forget the guy's name, but he wrote this book called The Master and His Emissary.
Ah, yeah.
That's a good conversation too. But
anyhow, I'm on fire.
He's on fire, ladies and gentlemen.
Your Jap was a little bit too much.
Yes, it was. We're coming to we're coming to the end of the podcast.
I think so.
For sure.
Any last thoughts?
I mean,
you should read, I wrote a dream in the fifth story I wrote. So it's basically like this very short piece. Basically like is a collection of memories from when I was working at the bar that were kind of bummers, you know? Like a bunch of experiences that really stuck with me, and they were kind of like I had to process them, and so I put them all in this thing, and then wrote a dream sequence. I incorporated a touch of neuroscience in there, honestly. Just a touch.
So, two woo-woo narratives.
Hey man. I would say if I really were to step outside myself and be objective, I would say the mere fact of me writing it isn't so woo-woo. If you take any thing within the realm of experience as something that can be deciphered objectively, the objective fact of me saying something like I incorporate a little bit of the like it takes a little bit of the woo out of it when you take that phenomenological approach and say just the mere happenstance is worth the effort to understand or whatever. I get what you're saying, that things are hard to prove, and I really don't try to prove much.
Oh, yeah.
But it doesn't mean it can't help.
Yeah, I'm not interested in proof, but neuroscience more generally, troubles me because people use it as a unjustified appeal to authority all too often, and all the time really, with regards to any number of things. I mean the health benefits.
I'm gonna hit you with a little bit of your own brother Freud through Camille.
Oh, he's your brother? He's your brother?
That's
Sigmund
right.
Freud is your brother?
Because what authority? It's like I hear information, and if I think it makes sense, then I believe it, and I take that on myself. Like, what appeal? I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, people use neuroscience evidence as a crutch to be like, well, it makes sense neuroscientifically, so therefore, people do that more than necessary.
Well,
what do you mean by authority?
That right there.
Okay.
The fact that, I mean, you spelled it out. I mean, if
I'm not trying to do that.
But if it was merely the case then, right, that people heard, oh, and by the way, that this corresponds to neuroscientific blah 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 blah. You just do some hand waving bullshit with neuroscience. Then people go, oh well, it must be right.
Yeah, people get impressed by it all the time.
Oh yeah.
I would say
that itself is a sort of appeal to authority, and people will do this all the time, having no
really hot.
Thorough understanding of
neuroscience is really hot, which is really interesting. Actually,
it's
an archetypal fascination, I think.
Well, the thing is too.
So are a lot of things.
There's already research showing this, right? So the research basically shows that people don't really understand the social, cognitive, and personality science.
That's why.
And again, the neuroscience just usually goes towards confirming that.
Neuroscientists are these great.
So when you give people the social, cognitive, or personality, they don't understand, and they just shrug their shoulders and they go, okay, whatever. And then you give them the neuroscience, and they go, oh yeah, well that's right. So you could even give them bullshit and just tell them that the neuroscience confirmed it, and they go, oh yeah. Well, that's right.
In part, I think we know so little about neuroscience. Guys are able to get away with that as great explorers of the unknown field of neuroscience, and they can speak gibbery jabberish.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
Girls, I see it all the time where girls get woo about.
It just sounds brainy, dude.
Woo about.
Yeah, you just start talking about
neuroscience.
Amygdala and fucking,
Yeah, it's
Ariel and fucking.
Now I think that you tried to fuck me just now because you talked about the amygdala. So you try to fuck me, bro?
We speak of things that matter.
So I guess at the end of the conversation,
Sam thinks I'm trying to fuck him.
there we go.
It's dirty.
Yeah. Tastes bitter too.
Here we go.
Alright.
Neuroscience conversation over.
What I really want to know is where was the ideological content to this conversation? Because I think just driving home.
Drive home the ideological content?
I'll help the great leader.
I think you want to defect to North Korea.
I bet God Emperor Trump. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, hell yeah.
I think it's your cover and you're working for Special Unit 39 or whatever.
Yeah, that KPRK, I don't know, whatever. Yeah, what do they call the...
I forget.
The KBG
They have-
equivalent of the.
No, they
Koreans.
have some special unit that's dedicated to sabotage.
They have to.
These
right?
crazy fuckers go so far as to have like front restaurants in other Asian countries.
That's right. Yeah.
They've done some fucked up shit too.
So they have front restaurants in their own country, where, like, if you go there, they have restaurants that are just set up so that, like.
Oh, it's called Room 39, or Central Committee Bureau 39 of the Workers' Party of Korea.
That's right.
The Workers' Party.
WPK.
The
Dude,
Workers'
these guys,
Party.
This is an interesting Wikipedia page, I'll say.
What is it?
The WPK?
No,
How could that be interesting?
The Room 39 people are like
Oh.
North Korea's